Hello, everybody. Welcome to Voxel Viewpoint. We've kept you waiting, huh? Get it? It's a video game? No. All right. Into the year 2021, we're back to talk about the games we didn't talk about for all of 2021. It's been a weird year. Seems like it's been like 3 or 4 years crammed into one, because when I was looking back at some of these games, I didn't even remember they came out. I don't know if you guys feel the same.
No, it was so hard trying to make a list and then like remember,
Yeah.
Mm.
Like,
Yeah, it is a weird one.
and then
It's weird.
especially with all like the re-releases of stuff and then stuff coming to different platforms. It's like this came out this year. Oh, no, it didn't. It was actually
yeah.
last year, like my Crisis issue.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right. You want to put Crisis on here, and I'm like, I don't think that Crisis came out this year, but the package deal did, the trilogy, but that first game, that remaster came out last year, and yeah, just looking back, trying to remember that Hitman 3 came out this year. Uh, Resident
Yeah, that blew
Evil,
my mind, that one.
yeah,
I thought that was 2020, legit.
yeah. It came out right at the beginning of the year. When I looked back, Valheim was on there too, which seems like that I played that like 3 years ago. But I put a lot of time into that game earlier this year. Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're just going to first go through and give our top 5 games of 2021. We're just going to read them out, and then we're going to talk about them in chronological order of when they released. So I guess I'll start with my list. At the top, I have Age of Empires 4, which was a long time coming. I also have Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, specifically the plus Bowser's Fury. That was, Super Mario 3D World's a great game, but Bowser's Fury was the one that I spent the most time with and was great. I also have Valheim, and The Wild at Heart, which is a little indie game that I'll talk a little bit more about later on. And then to round off my list, I've got Resident Evil Village. So Leigh, why don't you run down your list?
My top one would be Resident Evil Village. Even though I'm not as hot as I am on others, it's still at the top, but I'll probably talk about that later. Forza Horizon 5 is on my list. We've got Psychonauts 2 on there. I've got a survival horror game called Tormented Souls, which I quite liked. Then I've got one that's going to be irrelevant to anybody in America, which is Asterix and Obelix Slap 'em All. It's going to mean nothing to anybody in America.
No, it means nothing to me.
We'll talk about Asterix later. It's fine. But largely, I find it's been quite an unremarkable year.
Yeah. Nothing really stood out. And then I think for a lot of us anyway, it was a long wait for Halo Infinite at the end of the year to see how that either succeeded or train wrecked. So none of us have that on our top 5 list, but we will be talking about it in the second part of the show, our honorable mentions, which is almost as long as the full games of the year list. So just to give you a heads up on how our year went. So Derrick, why don't you run through your top 5?
All right. Well, on my top 5, I also have Resident Evil Village, followed up with Tales of Arise. And as far as kind of like placing it, I'd put those two like right next to each other, because they were both like the two main ones that grabbed most of my attention to where I actually sat down and played them completely through without starting and stopping or playing like 20 other games in between.
Mm-hmm.
And then following up with that, I have Diablo 2 Resurrected. I have Final Fantasy XIV, the Endwalker expansion, just because their expansions are almost as big as full games. And then I have Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, which was a game I actually got to review, and it was just as good as the one that came out before it, if not better.
All right. Awesome. So let's jump into our discussions here. And I'm the only one that chose a game that came out before May. So I'm going to kick it off with Bowser's Fury and then Valheim. So Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. This is a remake or a remaster sort of deal of the Wii version of Super Mario 3D World, Wii U, sorry, and they added on this thing called Bowser's Fury, which is essentially a small open world Mario game. You are going around this. It's mostly covered in water, and the levels are islands in this lake or ocean or whatever. So you're kind of riding around on Plessy, the weird, looks kind of like a dinosaur that swims, and you're landing on these islands, and the islands are your Mario levels, your classic 3D platformer Mario levels. So each one has a set of challenges on it, and at the end you get a star, and the certain amount of stars you get activates your ability to fight Bowser, which is, in this particular game, he's just gigantic kaiju style, like Godzilla monster that periodically, while you're completing your tasks, he'll rise up out of this gooey muck and attack you like Godzilla would. He breathes fire at you. He causes all of these smoldering rocks to fall down on you. And if you have enough bells, I think it's bells in this one. It's either bells or stars. I'm not sure. You collect things in Mario. It's either moons or bells or stars, whatever. Once you get enough of them in this game, you can turn into a giant cat Mario and fight Bowser. And the deal is, every time he comes, you can turn it, and if you can turn into a big cat Mario, you can fight him, and you're just trying to collect a certain amount of bells before forget what the actual conclusion was of this game. Obviously you defeated Bowser, but I don't know if it was you fought him a certain amount of times and then it was over, or you just collected a certain amount of bells. Either way, once it's over, you can then go back into the world again and collect more stuff. And it was just a really tight open world. It wasn't huge. It wasn't filled with a whole bunch of side stuff that didn't matter. It was all based around, platforming challenges and what you'd come to expect from a 3D Mario game. It all felt really good. It looked really good, real sharp on the Switch. Ran pretty good. There were a couple times where it would slow down a little bit, but the Switch is getting kind of old, so can expect that a little bit. But it was just a really great example of what they could do with a fully open world Mario game. If this is kind of like their template for what they're going to be doing in the future with Mario, then I feel like it's a pretty good starting point for them to go with. Because the platforming challenges and stuff, they were just as good as what you'd expect from a linear or like a Mario 64 style zone-based Mario game. Yeah, so did anybody else play this game? I think I'm probably the only one that ended up grabbing it.
No, I think that was one of the ones I had mentioned that I want to get.
Mm-hmm.
I've literally just found out it existed, so thank you.
Yeah.
I've never heard of it. I didn't even hear from it before. So no, I didn't. When did this come out?
It came out early. No, it was earlier in the year.
Oh wow!
Like, well, before Resident Evil Village. I'm not sure exactly what the date was. I think it was March.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, there you go.
And Super Mario 3D World is a great game. It's one of it's kind of it's people don't consider it a full 3D Mario because it technically isn't because you can't move the camera in full three-dimensional space, but it is a 3D game. Like it's all 3D engine, 3D rendered and stuff like that. And it's like an isometric camera. Sometimes it goes to like a 2D camera. And it's just pure fantastic level design and platforming, stuff like that. So you're getting, a great Wii U game that maybe a lot of people didn't end up picking up because it's on the Wii U.
Yep.
Plus this extra add-on, this Bowser's Fury, which is about 10 hours long. So it's a pretty good chunk of content. That's also just fantastic in terms of like what you expect from a 3D Mario game. I like this better than I did Mario Odyssey, which I liked to a certain extent, but it wasn't like Mario Odyssey didn't blow me away or anything. And I never went back to it after I beat it, even though there's a lot of extra levels that you can unlock and stuff like that. Once I was done with it, I was done. But this, even when I was done with Bowser's Fury, I wanted to keep playing more. So it was really great. Lots of secrets and hidden stuff and challenges and stuff like that. And so I was talking about Bowser coming up and with the fire breathing and the rocks falling and stuff like that. That can happen in the middle of you doing another challenge. So it's like dynamic like that where he's rising up out of the muck in the background, and if you're in the middle of like trying to complete a coin challenge, like collect all the special coins or something like that, and you're doing like tough platforming, he can come up and he can really screw with you in the middle of this and then make it even more challenging. So it's like a kind of sometimes frustrating, but also cool little way to mix things up in the middle of what you're doing.
Keep you on your toes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I would definitely recommend that. I mean, it's a Nintendo game, and it has Mario in the name, so it's probably never going to go on sale, at least not for the next decade. But I would recommend picking it up. It's a great package if you want some 3D platforming. Yeah, so my next game is Valheim, which kind of took the world by storm there when it came out. This was like every couple of days there was another report that was like another 1 million copies sold. And it's a game that kind of came out of nowhere. And it's in early access. It's still in early access. And what this is a open world survival game based around like Viking mythology. You kind of start on a procedurally generated gigantic world, and you basically work your way up like you would in a lot of survival games. You can chop wood and mine stone and mine gold and things like this to kind of progress down a skill tree. And there's hunting and there's combat. Definitely you'll find like you'll fight these little goblin creatures that come after you, and and like big giant trolls that'll smash you in one hit and stuff like that. And the goal is to build up and kill a boss in each of the game's different biomes. So you start in like a temperate forest climate, then there's like a swamp area, there's a real dense forest area, and so on and so forth. And the progression is trying to get good enough to beat these bosses and also find them, because you start on this huge map with no idea where any of these bosses are, so you kind of have to explore. You have to build boats to get across water, stuff like that, and find where these bosses are, figure out what you have to do in order to defeat them, and then actually execute on it. And it's also got co-op, so you can have your friends come in and help you with the bosses, help you build your settlement and stuff like that. And it just has a really good, like right out of the gate, even though it's in early access, it had a really good progression to it. You could put a lot of time into it and get a lot out of it. And I spent a lot of time in this game. It was one of those games where I just kind of lost myself in the exploration and just kind of wandering around. Like, I was going for the goals and stuff like that, but it was mostly about just kind of exploring and spending my time in the game. Now, Derrick, I know you had picked it up, but I don't know how much you ended up playing of it.
I actually had a group that was really into it, so I'd hop in with them from time to time. But they had like full on bases, they had food, they had armor, they had weapons, they were going after the bosses.
Yeah.
So I had done a couple of them with them, and I think the most fun I had was this one that was like in a swamp, because you had to watch out for the swamp. You're trying to fight this. I think it was like a giant like Trent type boss, and it was just a
like
tree.
Oh, yeah, an int from from like Lord of the Rings. Yeah, the big tree guy. Yeah, he was tough.
Yeah. And it was fun. It just, they were so hardcore into it. They were just like, here you go, hop here, take this, use this potion, portal here.
Yeah.
We have a forward base here. All right, now keep up with us here. It was just kind of like overwhelming to play with a group like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be tough, especially if you didn't have the beginning steps yourself, like the figuring some of that stuff out yourself.
Yeah, but it was definitely fun, and like I know a lot of people that really enjoyed it. So
yeah,
it was just one that didn't really suck me in, but I played it and I enjoyed the time that I played in it. It's another one of those games where there's like a lot to it, kind of like like when Minecraft came out, there was a lot to it, and I really hated that. But then it kind of like grew on me as I played it more and more.
Yeah, it's it's definitely a lot to get into. And like even out of the gate, even in early access, it had a ton of stuff to do. And then they kind of had this double-edged sword where they were, they kind of were super popular, and then slow with the updates, and people started getting a little shitty about that. Like, where's the next update? How come? Blah 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 blah. But they still stayed like their small team, so it wasn't like they could all of a sudden put out all this content and stuff like that. So they're still putting stuff out, and they did put out one of their bigger expansions. But at this point, I know what that game is, and unless I read something in their DLC notes that really spikes my interest, I kind of know. Like I'm not gonna go back in now until it's like either got a huge update or the game's out.
Right.
Because it's just like I've already spent enough time with it, and I'm perfectly fine just waiting for it to finish up. All right, so Resident Evil Village. I will let Leigh lead this one as he had it as his number one. So take it away, Leigh.
It's another Resident Evil, guys. Who thought it?
What?
It's another Resident Evil. Who thought it?
What? Huh?
Resident Evil Village. Second of their Capcom's kind of first-person version of this story. I really enjoyed this when I first played it, but it has the tone of maybe not as grim as Resident Evil 7.
Yeah.
It's not as gory or gross. But it's
Resident
Evil
Evil 7 was gross.
Yeah, it was just slimy.
Yeah.
This is bloody. This is kind of macabre sometimes.
It's gothic.
But it's a little pulled back. This is kind of like a weird amalgam of Resident Evil 4 mixed with 7, with like the village hub branching out into things. It's a solid game. It is fun. The shooting's definitely better in this one than the previous one, and the combat type stuff is better than it was in 7, which was a bit jinky. I don't know. I didn't like the combat very much in 7. You tried to avoid it as much as you could because the shooting was horrible. This feels much better without dipping too much into being a shooter.
Until the end.
Until the end, and you get into some horrible Lycan colony, which I hated, and I never want to play again. But that's the thing. I enjoyed it on my first go, but whereas I've often, with all these games, I jump straight back in and try and do kind of faster runs and stuff like this, I've never been inclined to go back. There's something about the loop that doesn't work this time. So, as you would know, Ryan, as someone who likes 4, there's something similar about the way you use the hub of kind of that village area of 4 that doesn't quite work so well here, even though it's more advanced. If anything, this feels more restrictive now than it did then. Yeah, if that makes sense.
The hub of 4. What is the hub in 4?
Well, if you think about it, it's all based around hubs, isn't it? You keep going back into the loop of the village and then going round the church and then coming back through the church.
There are multiple like
branches
times you come back to a certain area. Like you do that in the castle too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a loop that is similar to this. They're definitely leaning into it. But this just feels more like you're being penned off to extend the game than it did then. For some reason, there's a secret sauce in 4 that hasn't worked here, even though I tried to do the same thing.
I think the big difference is the fact that you do move forward in 4. Like you don't just stay in the village. Like so in 5, you just keep coming. The only hub is that one. This is the village you keep coming back to. And it's cool that you unlock new things, but it's still that same village. And eventually you're just like, okay, I'm sick of... Like you figure out the flow, pretty much. It's like after the second zone, you're like, okay, I know that it's just going to be, now I'm going to go to this person, now I'm going to go to this area, now I'm going to go to this area, and I'm always going to circle back around. Whereas 4 kind of... by giving you new environments and new hubs and stuff like that, kept changing, I guess, is probably a big reason why 5 didn't quite capture that magic. Yeah.
And kind of the branches it takes you to in Village feel exciting when you go to a new one, like Lady D's castle.
Yeah.
Boy, what a miracle of marketing that was.
Yeah, well, they kind of fell into that.
Enjoy your 2 hours in that mansion that you thought there was going to be the whole game. But once you go to those things, it's kind of over before you realise it in all those places. So you get this interesting stuff like, did you get far in the game?
Oh, yeah, I beat it. Yeah.
Oh, so you got to the House of Dolls?
Yeah, yep.
Which is a really, really cool set piece, but it's over before it started.
Yeah, it was like, oh, this is really cool concept and stuff. And then it was over and it's like, okay, so That's it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you never need to go back. And yeah, so it just keeps doing that. And to be honest, one that's the most extended is the bit I hated the most, which is where you go into some sort of lichen ruins, like
Yeah,
werewolf
the
ruins.
stronghold. Yeah, that was
And
was by far the worst part of the game.
just enemy rush nonsense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah. So, as I say, it is well crafted and it's enjoyable, but it's not even probably in my middle of the kind of the mainline things because I've got no impetus to go back to it now.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the hook. It's got loads of cool set pieces. It's got nice vibe, nice graphics. There's just something missing. There's something missing from it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. But it's still good. Don't get me wrong. A kind of middle Resident Evil thing's still a good time.
Yeah. I mean, it could be worse. That's for sure.
It may well have been in a better year, not on my top, which would have been unusual for me because they're always on my top. But if it was a better year, this might be a bit lower down on my top fives, I think. But it's been a bit of a rubbish year, so well done you, I guess.
Well done, Capcom. You are the gem in the pile of crap. So one thing that, like, after I had finished this game, I thought about it, and like it has a much stronger ending than beginning than it does middle and end. And one of the big things that was I was excited about was they were bringing the attaché case back from 4, where you had to like play Tetris with the with all your equipment. And I remember in 4 that was like something you were doing constantly throughout the game. You were always moving things around to make room for other things. And I don't think I ever did that really once in Resident Evil Village.
Kind of like once you had your setup, you were pretty set because there wasn't that much. Like they didn't throw that much at you to where you had to keep constantly changing stuff around.
Yeah,
as you would in previous ones.
And there just didn't seem like there was as much stuff. And like the case was like started out much bigger than it did in 4. So like I remember when you first get like the shotgun in 4 and it takes up this huge chunk of the case, and you're like you're literally moving like grenades and ammo packs into the 2 slots at the end to make sure you can fit, and some like an herb, one extra herb or something like that. And here it just never seemed like it came up and was never an issue. And
no, it's like a lip service fan thing to bring the case back rather than a robust management mechanic that's kind of fun to mess around with. It just feels like, you remember this, guys, this was fun, wasn't it? And you don't really pay much attention to it.
Yeah, it just wasn't. The game didn't seem like it was. They took enough time to balance it to make that an actual part of, like, a major part of the game. Yeah. Derrick, anything you want to add about Village? Because this is on your list too.
Yeah, it was definitely on my top because it was actually the first game I played this year that I actually completed from start to finish without starting anything else. It was a lot of fun to play through. I think some parts of it were completely overhyped for marketing, like they did with Lady D, and then it was very lackluster when it came to it in the game. But I'd have to agree with Leigh on the doll set piece was probably one of my favorites, even though it was so short. It was just, it kind of like in that moment kind of captured you with like what you were doing and then trying to figure out how to get out of there. And I kind of enjoyed like unlocking the different parts of the village. Like I like how they had the kind of hub world set up and then kind of going and coming back. I didn't think anything was like overdone, if that makes sense. Like it didn't become tedious.
Yeah, I guess that goes to the fact that the game's not really that long either.
And that comes from like I didn't play 7 until right before this game came out. So I kind of played 7, finished it like a couple days before this released, and then played this.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I did too. Like I had not played 7 and then played it. I don't remember exactly when, like what the time frame was, but I went pretty much from 7 to Village, and 7's really good. It's again, the ending is like the later chunk of that game is questionable. But that seems to be the way that Resident Evil rolls most of the time.
Yeah.
But like I had a lot of fun with the house and like finding all the secrets and unlocking all the different things. It's definitely a very different pace to that game than it is to Village.
For all the market. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, I was just gonna say it's definitely gonna be like interesting to see like what they do story wise with the next one, just because I kind of like how this one ended.
Yeah.
Like, I want it to come out, but at the same time, I could wait for it, hoping that they can pan out a pretty good continuation, you know, to kind of complete the trilogy if that's what they're gonna do.
Yeah, I don't know if they're doing a trilogy. They kind of said at the end of this one that this is over for what's his name?
Well, yeah, they said they had
Ethan. Yeah, but not the Winters though.
Yeah.
Oh,
So obviously that spin-off isn't there. So
Yeah.
we'll see how that goes. But it does have to be said, for all the marketing that we had around the villains in this one, the Bakers were a much stronger antagonists.
Yeah.
They're just it made you, they sold it like these are going to be as interesting a set of villains. And
Yeah,
they're kind of not.
They didn't really get too much into their personalities or anything like that. Like I was hoping they were going to. Yeah. So that was I guess the only one that they really got their due was probably Heisenberg. Only because he was around the longest, I guess.
Yeah, I was just gonna say he was the only one that was constantly there.
Yeah.
A quick shout out as well plot wise to Umbrella's witness protection relocation. Who put the Winters a short van ride away from a castle they didn't realise was there.
Yeah.
Well done. So let's not think about the plot.
Yeah, no, let's not think about the plot because that's the least ridiculous thing that happened in that game.
Holy hell.
All right, so that's Resident Evil Village, a game that is on Leigh's number 1 spot despite us kind of wrecking it for the last 15 minutes or whatever. But I don't know, that's kind of the way it goes, right? It was Resident Evil and it was fun, and I think we all like Resident Evil, so it's hard to ignore a game in that series when it comes out. I mean, what was it, a couple years ago? Resident Evil 2 was like high on all of our lists, the remake. So,
Yeah.
and technically, this is the only game that showed up on all 3 of our lists. So, Resident Evil Village, Resident Evil Village is technically our Voxel Viewpoint's Game of the Year. So
we award it the golden toilet.
Yeah, enjoy that mediocre pick. No, it's fine. It's just compared to, you know, what we all want from Resident Evil, it didn't quite live up to it. Especially coming off of that Resident Evil 2 remake. You know, you really wanted it to knock it out of the park, and it was fine. It just wasn't the best.
No.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about The Wild at Heart, which is a little indie game that came out in the summer, and the kind of pitch on this is it's a indie take on Pikmin. You are this little kid that gets lost in the forest. It's like this really beautiful art style. It's almost like cut out, cardboard cutout puppets on a background. They don't animate a ton. They just kind of like bounce back and forth, but it looks really great. Like the style is consistent throughout the game, and you're just going around and you're unlocking, just like you do in Pikmin, different kinds of little creatures that have different abilities. Like there are bigger, fatter ones that are good at breaking obstacles and objects. There are ones that are immune to ice damage, ones that are immune to fire damage, things like that. And as you collect them, you just kind of explore this space and unlock new areas based on the types of I forget what they call them in this game. They're obviously not Pikmin. I don't know. It was a while ago. It feels like 3 years ago when I played this game, even though it was like probably 6 or 7 months ago. But you just collect different ones and you unlock different areas and solve puzzles with them and fight off mobs and enemies and stuff like that. And it was just a really great, I really love Pikmin. And, I think it was this year that Pikmin 3 re-release on Switch came out. And I played a lot of that, and I played a lot of this too. I completed this game. It was just really good throughout. Lots of really good challenges, a really good take on that formula that you don't see. Like, nobody else is out there making another Pikmin game, probably because they don't sell very well, even for Nintendo. But they are a unique type of like action strategy game that you don't get a lot of. So when I saw this and it came out, I was excited for it, and it was a Game Pass game. So that, one of a few games on my list that I didn't actually buy. I $15 a month and you get access to all sorts of games, and this was one of them. So to have that be part of that subscription was a nice bonus as well. So that's that game. I think if you're a fan of indie games like I am, and like ones that are a little bit unique and have a lot of heart to them, like the story is actually kind of really good. Once you really get into it, you should check that out. It's the Wild at Heart, and I think it's still on Game Pass. I don't think they've taken it off yet.
Ooh.
All right, Leigh, talk to me about your Tormented Soul.
No S required. Been a rough year. Tormented Souls, another because I'm a basic bastard. It's another horror game. In the style of Silent Hill and Resident Evil. It's very much on an indie side. I believe it started life as a mobile game, but eventually had enough scope and interest within itself to skip mobile and turn itself into a kind of a console PC game. It's much more heavy on the puzzle in like the Silent Hill style, much more heavy on the kind of intricate puzzles than it is on the action.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a surprisingly well presented for an indie, essentially indie. Kind of, I think it's something like a $20 price tag. It's a good price tag.
Okay. Yeah.
But it is dense. in its puzzling. So that is something that, as I say, is more from, because you're not going to be a smart man to get past a Resident Evil puzzle.
Wait a minute.
But
What are you talking about? What am I supposed to do with this spade key?
Well, yeah, careful. So 1 in 4 for the lot.
Does the what I have a gem and I have a crown that has a gem slot in it, but it's empty. What do I do?
Can I point out how long it took you to work it out to get the key out the back of the room with the gas coming out of the floor underneath the things? It took you a long time.
Listen,
Don't do another that.
there was something in that depression.
Never a true word spoken.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this does look like it works on kind of that flip screen style of the earlier Resi games, but with a more dynamic camera that moves you through the flip screen, as it were. So it gives you a dynamism. Mm-hmm. Sometimes a little bit janky. Don't look the main character model directly in the eye. You kind of haunting you for life.
Well, it is a horror game, so.
Yeah, not like that though.
Yeah.
Jesus, needed a little bit of tweak, but yeah, it's nice and grim, nice and thoughtful. It's a 6-hour game or so, which is not bad for this sort of thing. A few unlockables, but yeah, it's a solid one if you like that sort of thing.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, cool. And I know you play that on Xbox. Do you know if it's available across the board or?
Right. So this is important if you are interested. It supposedly it was going to be like last gen, current gen, Switch and PC. Mm-hmm. They said they cancelled the PS4 and Xbox One versions.
Okay.
But they've decided to continue work back on. They will appear sometime next year, along with the Switch one, which drops in 2022. Okay. So there are other versions, so it's going to come across on everything. So
right now it's only on
Switch, PS5, Xbox One. No, not Switch. Sorry, PC, PS5, Xbox Series X, S.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
So it's only current gen, minus the Switch.
Yeah, that's early 2022. I think it's February.
Okay.
Ooh.
All right, so a little horror action there. Psychonauts 2. I also played through this entire game. This was one of the games that I really wanted to be on my top 5 list, but it just didn't. Once I went back and saw the other games and remembered how much fun I had playing them, this Psychonauts 2 kept getting pushed down the totem pole. So, Leigh, this was on your list, and I know I think you've played a bit of the first game, which I have not. So, why don't you kind of give us the lowdown on Psychonauts 2?
Well, I played a lot of the first one. The new Tim Schafer, I guess it's been a long time coming this one. I didn't think we'd ever see it. Mm-hmm. It's a kind of a weird mind-bending collectathon, cross-exploration, cross-platform, cross-action shooter type. Everything.
It kind of does a lot of stuff, and well,
most of it good.
Most of it good.
Yeah. What really sells it is the storytelling and the style and the aesthetic and the imagination that goes into it. It carries the gameplay, which is sometimes a little wonky, a very long way. Mm-hmm. But it's got a hell of a sense of style and kind of surrealism and kind of almost sometimes it's kind of Dali style weirdness. Sometimes it's just odd.
Yeah, so
it's just odd.
The idea is you're going into people's brains, and that is the level design. So whatever their mind is like, that is how that is portrayed in the level. So, you know, you start out with one that's kind of gross with mouth, teeth, and stuff like that. But there's also like, what are some of the ones that stood out?
The casino.
Yeah, the casino one was good. And there are also overworld levels too, which I actually think were where I spent most of my time, like the questionable area, which is like a forest park campground thing, which was fun to explore. Yeah, like you said, it's half collectathon, half platformer, and then there's also combat mixed in, which I think is probably the weakest part for me. Was the combat. It's just kind of like a lot of it came down to like just button mashing and the switching of the powers was a real drag.
Can be, yeah. Swap it out every 5 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, that was probably out of if that had been handled a little bit better, the combat probably wouldn't have been as frustrating as it sometimes was. But I think visually this game is amazing. It's hard to pinpoint, but it's like so it's got like this kind of like it's definitely got a cartoon aesthetic to it. And it kind of reminds me of something you'd probably see on like Nickelodeon in the 90s. Like that kind of like almost like everyone's heads weirdly shaped and like some of their bodies are weirdly shaped too. Like the person you play, Rasputin, has got like a big football shaped head, kind of like Hey Arnold. And
little snippet of like animated Tim Burton stuff as well. You see that a lot of those distorted characters.
Yeah. And they do a really good job with the lighting in this. That's probably one of the things that stood out the most, because you don't usually with like, you know, cartoon animation, lighting isn't always something that stands out, and it really stood out in this game. Right from the start was how they lit the scenes, not just, you know, have some sort of like generic lighting model throughout. They had like source lighting and stuff like that.
Another good thing about it is that the overall like metaphor and theme of it is kind of cool. The kind of the mental health type overarching thing is nice and quite well done. You could be really off with that. And I think it's well tastefully handled.
Yeah, they make fun of it, but they also take it seriously. So it's like you're doing things like collecting emotional baggage. That's one of the collectibles you have.
You can hear it crying in the corner.
yeah. And I also thought it was cool that like all those figments you pick up, which is one of the main collectibles, they're all pretty unique. Like they're all instead of just like picking up a million of the same coin, or what was it you picked up in Banjo-Kazooie?
Notes,
yes. Music notes. Is instead of it just being like a million of the same shape, like every one of these that you pick up is not only themed to whatever level you're in, but also a unique like neon lined shape. And also that sometimes leads to them being difficult to see and find because they blend in with the background or something like that. But it's I guess the other thing that I would complain about this is the menu, and especially the map was a real drag. The map especially is just, it's almost useless. The maps of the areas that like the levels and stuff.
There's a map.
Yeah, there's a map. It's just real bad. It does show you like, hey, you've collected this many of this, but there's no way to find out where you may have missed one. The map is like, it reminds me of the uselessness of the Super Mario Sunshine map, where it was just kind of the static picture, and it didn't indicate where you were. It didn't indicate where anything was. It was just like, here's this static picture with a couple of like points of interest kind of things, like, there's a big statue here, there's a door here or something like that, and it's just so useless for
it's
a
in
game.
there because Tim Schafer heard that at one point that maps in video games were a thing.
Yeah.
So it's
yeah, it's just it's almost as useless as the control map, the map and control, which was a pretty useless thing as well. Especially for a game where you're wanting to go back and collect things. You want the map to be good so you can make sure you've checked off everything you possibly can. But yeah, although like you said, the writing is really good. The story, like it's very clever in its writing, which is what Double Fine's always been known for.
Yeah, I'm glad money's being put into games like this, big money into games like this. It's good.
Yeah, and for this to be in development for so long and then to come out and be like really good is not always how things go.
We can only hope this for Beyond Good and Evil, but I doubt it.
No, I don't think that's good. Yeah, also another game I played through to completion via Game Pass.
Yeah.
All right, Derrick, it's your turn finally.
All right, I get to talk a little bit.
Yeah. Tales of Arise.
All right.
Let's talk about it.
So, originally Tales of Arise was supposed to come out in 2020, but as of most games in 2020, it got delayed. So it came out in 2021, but they were able to reach their goals, which was a worldwide simultaneous release on all platforms to everybody. So the moment it released, no matter what you were going to play it on, between PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, the Series S and X, and PC, the moment it released, you could get it where you wanted it. And that's the first for the series that's ever happened. So that was kind of a big step for them. Along with this being probably one of the best games in the series. Previously, we had Tales of Zestiria and Bastiria, which were slightly good steps in the best direction. Then they kind of took some time off while working on this one, and they remastered another one. I forget what the name of it was, but it was an older one. And then they dove into this, which came out, and it was absolutely beautiful as far as an anime game would be. And I got to play this one on the PlayStation 5, so my reflection of this would be from that version of this game.
Yeah, and I also played most of it on my Series S, and now I've got a Series X, so I've played a little bit on that too.
And with that S, you said you were having a pretty good time with that too. Just kind of throw this in here while we're talking about some multiple systems. It seems to be a pretty popular one.
The S? Yeah, the S is punches way above its weight in terms of like price for and performance. I had that for most of this year because next gen consoles were so difficult to find. And yeah, it was great. I played Resident Evil Village on it. I played all of Psychonauts 2 on it. Plus tons of other games that are not on my list. And they all were great. You're going to run into some limitations in terms of especially like the ray tracing capability, but I think ray tracing with these consoles is largely a gimmick anyway. I don't think it's ever going to be anything more than a performance hog that's going to make everything run crappy. But you are limited there, and you're not going to be hitting 4K 60 all the time, you're gonna have to be okay with it being a little bit lower resolution. But overall, it's been pretty good.
Yeah, that's good.
And you get the benefit of the fast storage, which is the big thing for this generation anyway. So,
yeah, that was probably definitely a big thing with that one, was the fact that it had that fast storage versus where it was harder to get these, fully next gen machines out. So they were kind of, what could have been a dumb move actually came out a pretty smart one in the state of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, so Tails ran really great on it, looked great on it, and I had a really good time with this game too. I didn't finish it because it's very long.
Yes, it is extremely long.
And as I was saying, technically my first real dive into a JRPG.
That's what surprised me too, because JRPGs are kind of my thing, so we always talk about them and discuss them.
Yeah.
But this seems kind of be one that kind of, grasps you a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I was hearing good things about it, so I checked it out, and yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it was a huge step forward. So to give a little bit about it, initially you're playing as man and woman from two different worlds, and you're on the world where the woman's world is trying to take over. And you just kind of, everything gets set in motion from that, because you don't have any memories. The character that you initially start out with, Alphen, he doesn't even know his name. He has a mask covering his face. And then everything starts from there. You're kind of you go from this quarry worker and slave to eventually turning into this hero and then going on from there. And I think when I finished the game, I put in around 160 hours. And
160?
Yeah.
What?
It was a lot. I went back and did a lot of the stuff.
I guess so. Jeez. I was expecting it to wrap up at I'm hearing 60 or 80, but 160. Oh my goodness.
I think the story concluded around 80.
Okay.
It was going back, leveling up, collecting things, trying to remember where some of the hunts were, because the game gives you a lot to do. Near the end of the game, you get fishing. Once you start getting characters will allow access to different areas. So It was going back through these massive maps as well, and trying to find all these high-level bosses you could fight. But the game kind of limits you in your XP progression. So if you try to farm out an area, it's going to start giving you diminishing returns, because it wants you to push through with the story and then come back to take on these higher challenges. It just doesn't want you to stay in one area, come completely overpowered and one-shot these bosses. It does a real good job of keep you moving and wanting to keep you moving too, because the story was also really good, especially once you started meeting the different characters and learning their backstories, kind of how you initially react with them. There was a lot of thought and detail and complexity into how everybody's related, what they relate to in the story, what they relate to in the world, and then how it all comes around at the end of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was the story, and the English voice acting is really good as well, which is a big thing.
Yeah, that was surprising too. Usually we get the shit end of the stick with some English voice acting on most of those.
No, it was good, and it's not all voiced, which can be a little jarring going between fully voiced interactions for the main story, and then all the side stuff is all text, and you're buttoning through it. I don't mind no voice acting, but it's very noticeable when you're going back and forth. It's a little bit jarring there. And yeah, the game looks fantastic. Graphically animates really well. All the characters have unique looks, and they all have different costumes, and which the aesthetic appearance is different from the armor that you put on. So that's a big deal, because you want them to look a certain way, but you still want to get the benefit of whatever your best armor is.
Right, and with that too, like combat was a lot of fun. You had this like kind of combo where each character kind of did something different, but it worked well together and never felt tedious. Kind of like a game we'll mention later on, where they kind of had a similar system, but it just got very tedious. Like some of the things you could do without actually doing it the way the game wants you to do it.
Yeah, so the combat is like you go into an encounter, and it's like a small arena with the enemies you're facing, but it's all real time combat. So you're controlling one of the characters, and most of the time I was Alphen with the sword, and you have a basic attack, and then you have some special attacks that use, was it AP? Is that what
you had action points that you could build up. And you kind of like, even though you could switch through the characters, you found yourself using him the most because he was the only one you could customize as far as what moves you had access to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he was also just pretty generic in terms of he's just a sword guy, so
yeah.
he was probably the one people are going to go with. And yeah, the combat is very flashy. Like you go into like super combos and stuff where you'll trigger somebody to do a combo attack, and it'll go into a little cutscene where they blast them or something like that. And that was always interesting. I guess probably the only annoying thing there is the constant call outs that they do. It's like constant chatter of like, they're just yelling their moves that they're doing constantly, and there's no way to like turn it off or reduce it or anything like that. You just have to deal with it.
Yeah, that would be one of the things, was there was a lot of chatter like that. Yeah. And actually recently, I forget what game it was, but there was the ability in one of them to turn it down, and I kind of found that it kind of like caught me off guard. I was like, oh, that's cool.
I mean, for the most part, it's useful because it gives you an idea of what they're using and stuff like that. But sometimes it just gets a little bit much.
Yeah. But no, it was a fantastic game. It had a very good pacing, and it had a decent conclusion. I enjoyed the end of it, what went on and what you found out. And they kind of knew in this one where to poke you with certain bits of information to keep you like guessing and wondering. It was kind of like some things were kind of hard to figure out, where sometimes you're like, oh, this is what's going to happen next. This is what's going to happen next. And then sometimes like part of something would, but then it would go a completely different direction.
I also feel like they kind of poked fun at some JRPG tropes. Like, I don't know, just like the way that they handled some of the sort of cringy things that can be in JRPGs.
Oh, yeah. I'd say one of the things would be like the romance and like that, like kind of between the characters with that, because there wasn't a whole lot of it in there.
Yeah.
But you could tell.
Yeah. Yeah, they handle that pretty well. Yeah, I like that game, and I intend to finish it at some point, but we'll see. I definitely am not going to put 160 hours into it, I can tell you that.
I wasn't expecting to come back and do that much, but like trying to hunt out every single little thing, I just kind of ended up wanting to, just because of how much I enjoyed it. 'Cause sometimes with those, I'll just play it through or finish up the stories. I'll do some like the big things.
Yeah.
But they also haven't had any DLC for it, so it was kind of like you want to get as much as your fill as you can of it, of what's there right now.
Yeah. Leigh, any interest in JRPGs in this game?
Absolutely not.
All right, cool.
Listen,
Diablo 2 Resurrected. Yeah, you got me.
I'm coming for you next. We'll get animated Resident Evil or some shit.
Yeah. I played Scarlet Nexus this year. What a pile of crap that was.
Oh, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
This is fascinating, because it's been such a mediocre year. We haven't really talked to each other about games much. So I don't actually know what you played.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of enjoying you actually talking about stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so that was Tales of Arise. That is on everything. Is it on Switch?
I think Switch is the one that it is not on.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that might bog down the Switch pretty bad.
Yeah, I don't know.
Unless they had a pretty good way to compress.
Yeah, they have done some things on Switch.
Yeah. Crisis.
Yeah. All right. Diablo 2 Resurrected, Derrick. We're continuing with you.
Yeah.
Talk about it. Let's talk about the
Diablo 2 Resurrected. It is the Diablo 2 Lord of Destruction you remember. Just fucking beautiful. This is how you do a remaster. The attention to detail and the work they put into this, with the ability to switch back to the original way the game looked when it released 20-some years ago, with the click of a button while you're playing in real time. Like,
I mean,
it's the only one that's done it.
Eventually, Blizzard had to figure it out, right?
Yeah,
because they kept screwing it up. Warcraft 3.
Yeah, Warcraft 3 was absolutely horrible.
And I feel like a lot of people weren't super hot on the Warcraft Classic either. Like,
yeah, no, that was not good. And this was done. Wasn't this? Hold on, This was done by the same people that did Tony Hawk, right?
Yeah.
So they came from doing Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2, which were fantastic, to
this and
blowing this out of the water.
And then being completely absorbed and shut down. So
yeah, which is really sad because they did some good work. And a lot of times on remasters, you'll just kind of play them when they come out, and you really won't look into the development or like watch developmental stuff on them.
Mm-hmm.
But while they were doing Diablo 2 Resurrected, they were putting out short like vlogs and little snippets of information and videos on it, to their process of how to make it. They tried to remake this as one-to-one as possible, to where they were going back to old archives of files, opening these files and trying to find out exactly what this pixel was. Like, I remember one time they were just talking, it's like a building that has kind of like a spice rack outside of it, and they were talking about like the cloves of garlic. Like they went back that far to find out exactly what that was to make that detail right.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And
so
yeah, I know you spend a lot of time playing it. Did you do it mostly co-op?
I actually did. I did a lot of single player, and some co-op. Like, I had my brother and a couple of our friends play through. Even though like my brother played it a ton with me back when it originally came out, I didn't really grab him right then and there. And then we had different work schedules, so I was kind of like, I had different people at different points playing through. But I spent a lot of time of it online, and it played very well. I think it crashed like once or twice in the beginning, and with their first patch they came out with, that quickly fixed that. Yeah, it just had a really good stable release. Some things that would kind of like hold it back a little bit for some people was on console, kind of not having those like rooms that we'd have before. In the old game, you kind of could like make your own custom servers and name them and go in and out real quick. There wasn't really an easy way to do this, so the approach to how you played the game became a little different as far as farming and doing like different runs that we're used to back in the day. Like, you do boss runs, or you do Pindle runs, which are little elite monsters you could go fight, or you do certain area runs to level up. But it still played pretty good.
How's it compared to like Diablo 3 on console?
They're two completely different beasts of a game.
Okay.
I love both of them, but they're both two completely like play style takes. To where, Diablo 3, you were more open, more free to make changes, to where Diablo 2 is, you need to know what you're playing, you need to know how you want to play it, and you only have limited amount of times to like respec per difficulty. So you have normal, nightmare, and hell. And I think between each of them you can get a total of 9 respecs. But if you mess up putting a point in somewhere, it's not easy to go back and fix something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of still keeps that kind of like that little hardcore element that Diablo 2 had as far as crafting your characters, making sure you knew what you were doing and putting stuff in certain spots.
How about like actually like the gameplay of it though, like controlling your character and stuff?
It felt like you just went right back into muscle memory. Even though it was updated graphically, it still had that kind of like point-to-point linear type movement that you were used to.
Mm-hmm.
It still felt like you were like pointing and clicking around, even playing with the controller.
Okay, so they didn't update it like with Diablo 3 where you have like direct control?
No, this is just a graphic rehaul on crack.
Okay.
But they kept it as close to the original as possible.
Okay, cool.
And it played great on the controller too. They pulled that off again with that. So it's easy to set up and map your buttons to what you want and use.
Mm-hmm. All right, cool. Well, let's just continue right into Pathfinder.
All right, and here we go again.
I don't know if you got to take a big swig.
This is the most in a row I've ever had to talk in one of these.
I know this is the way that this lined up is we're all back to back here.
Busy time of the month.
Yeah.
So Pathfinder, Wrath of the Righteous. It was the second in their series. I got to take a look at the first one and review that, and I got to come back and review this one as well. They kind of took what they did with the first one and they made it better and kind of took out some of the nuances. Like in the first one, you were focused on building up a kingdom. You know, you're kind of being your adventurer, but the main goal is to build up your kingdom and expand and go through the story like that. To where this, you're more focused on being the hero and, you know, kind of going through these different areas and figuring out the different mysteries and not worrying about having a community to worry about. Even though you had like little settlements and stuff you were helping out. And then they just kind of like expanded on everything from character creation, which can be, if you're not used to playing a game like Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder, can be a bit overwhelming. But then at the same time, you could completely craft one from scratch, or you could take a pre-made hero and just start out the game like that.
Cool.
Sorry.
So did they change anything with the presentation? Because I know, if I remember that last one right, there was like it's like a quest map, like a...
Yeah, they brought back the quest map. You kind of move around in the same way on there. It was like you had you were a little piece on the board and you can move it around, and it would have like, it would take a certain amount of time to get there, and then different random events would be rolled in the background that could happen. So they kept that part of it the same. So they kind of like the combat, the gameplay, that kind of loop was the same. Mm-hmm. It's just you're more focused on that adventuring and going through these stories and side stories and character stories, which can be kind of almost an overabundance too. There is a lot to do in this game. I think I've dumped maybe 20 to 40 hours into it, something around there. And I feel like I still haven't like barely scratched it between, you know, trying to figure out where to go. And now they kind of have some things to where, you know, the earth is cracked through, so you have to find different ways to go around. But it's not as straightforward as the old map, so it's a little bit harder to tell where you're supposed to go.
Mm-hmm. All right. Cool.
But yeah, it's turn-based combat that's pretty much stayed the same. It's very nice and fluent. It flows well. You have a top-down view.
This is they have this plan to come out on consoles next year, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
They haven't had too many updates on it, but it is still planned to come to console.
All right. Cool.
So the last one actually came to PC and console at the same time.
No, it came out on PC first, and then the console version came out later.
Did it?
Yeah. When we checked it out, the PC version had already been out for a little while.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, they did the same thing. They put it out on PC first, and then they're probably like, you know, outsourcing the console port to some company that does that regularly. Yeah, so that's it's cool that they're keeping that series going, because I know it's kind of filled a hole that was missing for a lot of D&D fans.
Yeah, definitely. Because just recently we have got the ports of older D&D games that, unless you really, really like that old school, Windows 98 kind of look tier games.
Are you talking about like the Baldur's Gate remaster?
Yeah, Baldur's Gate and those. It might not be for you, or this is kind of, your modern version of
those
games
are really old games. All right, cool. So that's Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. And now we're going to go on to my top of the list here. Age of Empires 4. I don't remember when Age of Empires 3 came out. It was a long time ago. And it was not... It was fine. In fact, going back to it this year, because they put out a definitive edition, it's a pretty cool game. It's just very different from what Age of Empires 2 was, which was a very traditional RTS game. You're collecting your resources, you're building up your armies, and the armies are very rock paper scissors. This enemy is good. This unit's good at this. Good against killing this unit. This unit's good against killing that unit, and you just kind of mix up your forces that way. Age of Empires 4 is very much a throwback to that old formula with a really, really nice coat of paint on it. It is 3D. The engine is 3D. You still kind of have the top-down isometric view of the events, but you can rotate the camera around and get different perspectives on the battle and stuff like that. And it's really just at its core a refresh of the Age of Empires 2 formula. You've got your wood, your gold, your stone, your food to collect. You're building barracks, you're building your archery range, and you're building your giant army to conquer the world. And really, so there's two things here that really make this stand out, and one is the level of like polish on it. This is a fantastic playing game, looking game. Like, every element of this game is very high production, which you just don't get these days with a real-time strategy game. And like, the campaigns are extremely well done. They have like actual FMV, like drone footage of where these battles took place, and they do like historic recounts of like, the Normans invaded England here, and you have your Battle of Lincoln and your Battle of York and stuff like that, and they actually have real footage of what it looks like today, what it would like. They superimpose like computer graphics over what it would look back then, and that was always a big reason why I liked the Age of Empires games over, say, something like StarCraft or other RTS games that weren't history based. Is you actually learned the history of what you were fighting through in these campaigns. And it's not like a super in-depth documentary or anything like that, but you get the idea of like, going back to the Age of Empires 2, you'd go through the the William Wallace campaign, and the Joan of Arc campaign and stuff like that, and you'd get historic information, and it's the same thing here. There's a few campaigns that are all pretty long. There's like at least like 10 to 15 missions in each one. And they're all varying degrees of like defend against the siege, be the attacker, Some of them are a little bit more unique and like you're disrupting trade routes and stuff like that. They have like tiered objectives as you go through them. And yeah, you're a little worried after 3 and then how long it's been since they've put one of these out, that are they just going to cash in on the name, or are they actually going to put the effort in? And they most certainly put the effort in. I'm not really an online player, so I haven't really jumped into the multiplayer all that much, but speaking as from the campaign's perspective, really, really fantastic game. And like gets me very excited to see what the future of the genre is, because there's a few RTS games on the horizon next year that look to be kind of revitalizing the genre, which really hasn't seen a lot of love in the last probably like 10, almost 15 years.
No, there hasn't been a lot at all.
No.
Like, I remember when we went back to StarCraft 2.
Yeah, StarCraft 2 was kind of it, and that's been done for a long time.
Yeah.
And that was really my thing anyway.
Yeah. We got our asses kicked online. I still remember that.
Yeah. And as far as like this game goes in terms of the online experience, one of the reasons why I didn't play Age of Empires 2 online, and I probably won't play too much of this online, is it is really all based around building who can build the biggest army the fastest and stomp the other player, and that's fun.
I can imagine too it'd still be pretty long games.
Yeah, you're looking at like 30 to 45 minute games, just to get your entire civ stomped in one push from, a million enemies that they send over to you. And that's fun if you're the one that has the big giant army, but if you're not, then it's not fun at all. There isn't any balance there. It's not like, oh, maybe you can squeeze out the victory. It's like, no, if they start attacking first and they have a bigger army, they're going to just stomp you. They do. So one of the cool things in this game is right now there are only a handful of civilizations, but they all play very, very differently. There was always some uniqueness to the civilizations in the previous games, but they kind of ratcheted it up in this one. The English kind of play as the pretty traditionally. They have their longbowmen and a couple of unique technologies and stuff like that. But when you start getting outside of that, outside of Europe, you have like the Mongols, which all of their buildings can be packed up and moved. So even like their town center and castles and stuff like that, you can just pack them. You can pack up your whole town and move to a different location. If you like, say, plant yourself somewhere, use up all the resources, and then want to move somewhere else. And they all have unique technologies that make training certain units faster. So you're encouraged to, if you're playing as one civ, to use a particular type of unit, whereas with another you might be encouraged to use a different one, and that kind of varies up the combat a little bit more than having everything just be like your sword, spear, and archers and cavalry units. So there's a lot of variety there, and they're going to be adding more to it as well. So there'll be more campaigns, there'll be more civilizations. It seems like they're going to keep building on this to really expand it out. So it was surprising when I came to the conclusion that this was my number one game, but after I really thought about my experience and, lead up to this and like anticipation and it paying off, and actually being what I wanted it to be, it ended up being the winner. Because like I don't, Age of Empires 3 came out, but I still went back and played Age of Empires 2 forever. Like they put out the definitive edition of 2, and I still play that one. I don't play 3, and now that this is out, I don't really see any reason to go back to 2, because there's nothing that 4 does that 2 doesn't. Like there's nothing that isn't, that I'm not satisfied with 4. So that's a huge huge thing to finally get a game that will take Age of Empires 2's place, which came out in 1998. Yeah, so that's that. Hey, guess what? Game Pass.
Oh, really?
I didn't. Yeah, that's on Game Pass. So.
Oh, I'll have to check that out then, since I've returned to Game Pass.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Adding in that hard drive was a good move for that.
Yep. So, my number one game from Game Pass. All right. So, speaking of Game Pass, Forza Horizon 5, Leigh. I played some of this, and just like I do all of the Forza games that come out on Game Pass now, and it's pretty good. But why is it on your top 5 list? What's amazing about this game?
Nothing amazing about it, but it's
all right, cool. Let's move on then.
Yeah, let's move on. It's more of the same, but I like the same of it. It's just it's chill. There's no kind of I don't know. It's kind of a stress-free gaming experience. I enjoy all of them. I don't quite like it as much as 4, but that might be due to the setting.
It's not
like
in your
the setting
backyard.
of this one, which
you're not blowing donuts in your backyard.
Well, this is it. Why would I want to go visit a volcano in a place I'm never going to see, when I could just drive to a place I can drive to myself in an hour? Why experience that? You'd leave it behind just for the birds.
Yeah, fuck
No,
volcanoes.
there's always fun to unlock and keep unlocking stuff, and I like the loop, and it's a weird half story thrown into this, but it's just a nice, enjoyable game to roll around in. I've always found them quite enjoyable. I'd certainly play. I'm not really a driving sim person, so I'd always take these games over Forza Motorsport or a Gran Turismo.
Yeah.
You could literally just put this on and lose 20 minutes, or you could lose 3 hours.
Yeah,
and you can burn around.
It does. The Horizon games do that good balance of arcade sim, arcade / sim. Like they're not completely arcadey. Like you're going to be talking about Cruise and Blast here in a little while, but no. They aren't full on sim either. Like they have that driving line. It's very very loose with the controls and everything like that. So.
What I do like with this, though, is the kind of the different weather systems you hit, where suddenly you're in the middle of a sandstorm you didn't know you was going to be hitting, or you're in torrential rainfall and everything. Graphically, it's amazing. It's fantastic graphically.
Oh yeah, the game looks unbelievable.
The way the environment works. But you know what? I'll probably never complete it, and I don't care, because it's like I could just happily leave this tomorrow and think I had a really enjoyable time with that one.
Yeah.
It's one of the best brain off games I've played this year. I don't have to think about it at all. But yeah, it's and Game Pass again.
Yep.
Should we shout Game Pass out again? So much content, and if you're an unlocking freak, there's so much in this you can keep doing and keep going round on. So it's this ideal Game Passing. It'll always be on there. It's not going to be timed. So
no, it's Microsoft, so it'll be on there forever. Same with Age of Empires and Psychonauts now too. And then
It's another,
we'll talk about Halo Infinite. That'll be on there forever.
it's another solid Forza Horizon entry.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, good stuff.
All right, well, let's continue on, Leigh, with Asterix and Obelix Slap 'em All.
Jesus.
That just rolls off the tongue.
Well, you massacred it, but well done you, I guess.
Yeah, I massacred it, sure.
Uncultured swine.
Uh-huh.
This is going to mean nothing to you. This is because, you don't think the pop culture works outside of America, I don't think. Asterix is a thing that is big. It's always been big in Europe since the 60s. A little bit like, I know you say you don't really know this IP, but it's kind of like Tintin. You must know Tintin, right?
Yeah, I'm aware of Tintin.
Yeah, which has kind of been around for like 50, 60 years, but it doesn't quite penetrate kind of the Americas.
Yeah.
And this has been around since the 60s, this thing. The concept of Asterix
So this
is
just Asterix you're talking about.
Asterix the Gaul, the books are called, but since Obelix is popular and they're a pair, they kind of tend to throw them in together now.
Okay.
But the concept is it's kind of 50 BC, and Rome is kind of like Age of Empires, but it's not. But
right.
kind of Rome is kind of rampaging across, just a land, taking up everything they can. Except there's one little holdout, this village, in kind of Western Europe.
The Sparta of Rome.
Except they're not. They're amiable people. They sit there and they're nice. And they've got their bards and stuff that can't sing and stuff like that. But they're generally charming, amiable people. But they've got a banger of a alchemist who gives them a potion, which means kind of they can amiably just kick the shit out of people. And it's the whole joy of reading the books is kind of watching them, their blasé decimating of whole Roman armies like it's not even a thing. So kind of they.
So this is. So, is this a TV show?
No, it's a set of French albums. Albums are like kind of like big, long form, chunky comic books. That's the way they do it in Europe.
All right.
They're like big kind of like 50, 60 page full stories.
Okay.
Where they go around kind of the world.
What are they, like a graphic novel?
Yeah. But kind of not really dipping into kind of xenophobic things, but definitely looking at kind of idiosyncrasies of all the people they go around.
Okay.
They'll look at the quirky people and their different ways. But yeah, so the kind of unstoppable force meets immovable object and hijinks ensue. There you go. That's Asterix.
So this is a video game?
This is something that is going to appeal to almost nobody, apart from me, I think. It is a very enjoyable game, but you'd have to be very specifically into the genre and the IP.
What's the genre?
It's kind of a belt scroller beat 'em up, much in the same of.
So like Streets of Rage, kind of.
No, more like bigger than that. Kind of, it's very much like there was actually an Asterix game in the 90s. It was an arcade game. You remember that Konami Sweet Spot when they had they were saying you Turtles Arcade and The Simpsons, and X-Men. Well, this was one of those, and it's almost kind of like an updating of those ridiculous beat 'em up sort of thing that is very arcade big as opposed to console big. Again, this is pure fan service, but if it's fan service that works for me, I don't care. One of the big things about it is it's like they perfectly captured, as somebody who grew up when I was literally single digits reading these books, which are kind of fun, weird plays on the language, sort of quippy things. The art style is so incredibly precise. It's a beautiful looking game. It really is. If you want to go into that thing of adapting comic art, like graphic art things onto the page, it's like it does it better than, like, say when Streets of Rage did it and did that paintly type thing. It's a step above that. It's literally like the comic coming to life. It's not going to appeal to anyone. apart from people that like either retro beat 'em ups or like the franchise. I wasn't that sure it's going to be very good because it's another Microids bought kind of have the IP for a while, and they've been releasing
developed by Mr. Nuts Studio.
Yes, well, they've been giving it different things over the last kind of year and change. They've been doing ports of old PS2 era games. They was like Asterix XXL, and they've done 2 or 3 of these, and they haven't quite worked because they keep getting different people that kind of can't quite remaster or remake the things properly. But this is something that's
capture the magic. They couldn't capture the magic.
No, they were kind of fun, kind of weird brawlery type things, but on a more.
So I'm seeing this is on Steam, and so I can buy it right now and I can play it.
You could, but you get nothing from it because you won't really know what's going on.
It has 45 reviews,
Boy.
which on Steam is really low.
Yeah.
And the reviews are mixed.
Mixed?
No, mixed.
Okay, fair enough. It is a bit long, I'll give you that. It's a bit long in the tooth. It's about 6 hours long, and that's probably a bit long for a kind of a brawler like this.
Okay.
That doesn't help. No, I don't know. I don't quite get that, personally. I think it's a very solid, fast-paced kind of...
Oh, it looks like a lot of people are complaining that it's a pretty bare-bones PC port. No settings to adjust and no controller remapping or anything like that.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
That's a shame.
That's kind of what Microids is in the business of doing.
Well, yeah. They do this thing every time because, like I say, they've released 4 of these things out over the last year and a half.
Yeah.
And they throw you in a nice package, and they give you, like, when you buy the physical things, you get figures and you get key rings and you get posters, and then you get barely a game.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, thanks, I've got everything else, but kind of a disc that you can't do much with. But this is one of the ones that does work on its own merits, and it's kind of, they've finally found somebody that can work to its strength. It's people that kind of clearly like the franchise, as opposed to people that have got the what's the word? They've got the assignment to make the game.
Yeah, they're just I don't know. I can't think of the word right now. They're just
just work
going through the motion.
Yeah. The next studio through the door.
All right.
Yeah, but it's actually a Microids one that isn't that bad.
All right. Well, I'm hoping that what we'll get is the Asterix and Obelix international comeback story, where finally they put out the game that brings everybody together, and then they can really capitalize on the sequel.
No, you're just Philistines. You all think there was a video game crash in '83.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. There was like kids in England at 16 buying Ferraris. It was ridiculous. Bedroom coders. Getting helicopters to work at 16. But America's like, oh no, we need to lose the copies of E.T. Help.
Yeah. Well, that's because before that, we were the ones getting the Ferraris and the helicopters. And then they put out E.T.
It's literally just E.T., nothing else.
I still have no idea how to play that game, by the way.
None of them.
First, you go to that landfill in Mexico and dig it up.
I actually might have a copy of it somewhere.
Oh, that's...
I'll have to look and see if I can find my Atari. I have one sitting around somewhere.
As soon as people lost the paper manual to those games, we were all fucked.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of stuff that... Like, if the internet didn't exist and you didn't have the box from Metal Gear Solid, you wouldn't be able to beat it.
Yeah. It's absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, they're super obscure. Anyway, I played a beat 'em up this year.
Big surprise. Final Fantasy 14 Endwalker, Derek.
Listen, the only thing I need to say about this game is they had to stop selling it because it was so popular. My job here is done.
Yeah, that's. I don't know if that's really selling it.
Isn't this on your list every year?
No,
this
actually,
one game.
This is the first I've actually came back to 14. I've played each expansion, but I don't think I've talked about any of the others.
Yeah, I think this was definitely the year of Final Fantasy 14, just in general. So you were actually able to play it.
Yes,
I'm assuming
because I work at night. I was able to get in those small queue times in the morning.
Yeah.
To where there'd be like 20 or 30, which was normal for the game. You know, usually it'd be like maybe the max of 112 at night. Normally prior to the release of Endwalker.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
So there were always queues for this game?
Yeah, it stayed pretty popular and it has a pretty big fan base behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Especially being with like what it was going from, I think more of it's due to like the story of the game in its entirety coming from a failed attempt at an MMO to going back to the drawing board, destroying the initial world, and then listening to the fans of the series and remaking it.
Yeah, it's kind of like the No Man's Sky of MMOs.
Yeah. And with this too, they even tied back in, you know, they call Final Fantasy 14, which was 1.0, they call that the Calamity, and that's tied into the beginning of the game. And then you start with 2.0, which is here, which has been running up until now, which everybody knows. Mm-hmm. And Endwalker is actually going to be the final arc of this part of the story. So this will kind of conclude everything that's happened.
Okay, but so that's why it's so big, so popular. So everyone wants to figure out. Everyone wants to walk the end and walk to the end.
Yep. Go to the moon
Endwalker.
Because that's where part of it takes place is on the moon.
The moon, like our moon, our real moon, or
well, that world's Eurasia's real moon.
All right.
But yeah, so it's just kind of concluding the story for everybody that's been playing, and we'll wrap it up. It won't be the end of 14 because they said it'll keep going on. It's just still to be the start of another part of a story they can tell.
Okay.
But yeah, I think
one of the things, an MMO, so it's obviously they're just gonna be like, all right, well, we're done.
Yeah,
wrap it up
for one that's just as popular as well. And part of their thing was with everything going on with Blizzard. Kind of shifted their players over.
Warcraft in general not being great.
Yeah.
Right now.
That's what kind of shifted because we saw, I think in 1 month, I think it was October to November,
mm-hmm.
there was like a 500,000 player increase.
Yeah.
And then from the next month over, it was within like a 2-month period that they gained over 1 million new players.
Yeah.
But once this actually released, because they even had early access for this, and that's where I started in, and it wasn't too bad the first day, but as soon as the second day hit, there was like, you would have like 4, 5, 6,000, 7,000. I think 7,000 something was the biggest queue line I seen, and that was about a 4-hour wait to get into the game.
Okay, so I guess what makes Endwalker worthy of putting on the list? Like, what is so special about?
It's just
other than you have to wait in a queue.
Well, besides the queue, once you make it past that, you're back into that world you love. This wonderfully crafted world with tons of stories, tons of things to do. Mm-hmm. We have 2 new character classes: the Sage, which is a new healer, and the Reaper, which is a new DPS class. That is actually the one that I've been playing through right now.
Okay.
So I just got them up to where I can start venturing into more of the content, because a lot of this too is like different blocks and getting to different points to access more of the content. Like, this isn't something you can just blow through.
Got to get that content.
Yeah, the story for just this expansion is somewhere around, depending how fast you go through it, is anywhere from 17 to 20 hours.
Okay.
And then to get yourself raid ready, to do, because they also release more story points in smaller updates.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like their structure of everything. To get ready for those ones coming up, I think I saw stats of it's somewhere around 109 hours of playtime between gearing, learning new mechanics, learning new areas, getting enough people into the different guilds, which they call free companies, to run this content.
Okay.
So there's just it's a lot there. They continue to deliver, and they stay very close to the community in interacting with us and following like what we want versus what they can do. The
Uh-huh.
balance of there, they've kind of made it like perfect, where they can really give us what they want, but still keep their original, their vision for everything,
Except access.
except for access,
Yeah.
because fuck COVID. They can't get, and they've even been upfront with that. We actually got like almost a month free time added onto our subscription.
Yeah. So, so,
Because
so
they
what messaging from them? What is the reason why they can't just
um
let more people in?
they actually increased the cap of people they would allow into the line. Um, I think it's up to 17,000 people can be in line per server they have, and they have multiple servers with multiple worlds in each one.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is right now they can't get enough of the computers and components to make these computers to set up new world servers, to where they're months and months behind, tying back to this semiconductor shortage that we're having, just because of how like high end their computer has to be to run each of these world and multiple worlds. They said it'll still be several months before they can even think about adding in more worlds to make sure that it stays stable and stays working, because they're not just trying to be like, oh, here's a world, here's a computer thrown together, hopefully it lasts.
I
They want to
got
make sure.
I got some computer parts. I can. I got an extra computer lying around. Maybe I can help.
But yeah, so unfortunately, due to that, and then the insanely increased popularity of it due to other game and company choices, that's where we're at. If you can get it in play, it's absolutely fantastic. I've been having a blast to where I've actually started kind of getting like addicted to playing it again, which really hasn't been that way for an MMO since like original WoW up
Yeah.
until like Burning Crusade or so. The last couple expansions I played, but they didn't grip me like they used to. Like really suck you in and make you want to keep coming back to play it.
Yeah, I mean,
But
this is really, it's obviously a cliche at this point, but as far as is this the WoW killer, this is the only time I've seen a game so be this popular that could actually take that crown. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would think this would be the one time and the one game that could actually have the possibility of doing that, even with some of the top streamers going to that have switched from WoW to playing this.
Because like even I feel like even that Amazon MMO New World kind of came and went, didn't really
yeah, like I've talked to a
make
couple
as
people
big of a splash as it probably would have liked.
Yeah, I guess with that, from like what I've heard and the couple people I've talked to about New World, is it just doesn't have the loop there to keep you. Like it's very grind heavy. It's very tedious. It's the tedious stuff. So where Final Fantasy, you can come in, you can queue up to do an alliance raid, which is like a condensed version of older raids to catch up on story if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's a mentor system. You could go out and do these, teach newer players how to do these different mechanics and do different raids and stuff like that. Or you could go into a queue that's for these high-end raids or the dungeons that you want to do. And then on top of that, there's just boundless other things they have. There's crafting, there's hunting logs, there's just so much fishing, collecting mounts, collecting minions. Just exploring too.
Yeah, see, all this stuff like sounds really cool to me, but then when you put the MMO layer over it, it's just like
So, but with this too, you can play this as a solo experience too. Once you get to a certain point within the game, you can actually start building up other characters that you could then bring an entire NPC group in with you into a dungeon if you
Oh.
don't have a group to play with, or if you didn't want to play with any players.
But I have to make those characters.
You have to get to the point where you can unlock it, which isn't too bad because it's kind of like the game does a good job at pacing itself and teaching you new things and introducing them.
Yeah.
So it just also depends how much you want to dump into it. If you wanted to, if you were that solo person that really wanted to enjoy this game and get into it, you could go in and get up to this point and then start building up those teams and then enjoy the content.
Yeah, I guess it's not necessarily the wanting to do it solo. It's more of like the act of doing things in MMOs is just not as engaging as it is with other games. Like, I don't know. It's just it's always felt like all about like your like the combat and stuff is just all seems very grindy and stuff like that. Even like I guess the last one I really played was Guild Wars 2.
Oh yeah, Guild Wars is an insanely grindy series.
And I liked it. Like, I liked it for a good chunk of time. And then it was, it was just a matter of, like, the combat, you were just clicking, waiting for cooldowns, and then you click the button to do it. And then that was it. There wasn't, like, any... Like, I like, active battles and stuff like that, where you're actually moving your character around, and that... impacts the fight and stuff like that.
Definitely has that. While you're looking at like the footage and all that I sent over, you'll kind of see some of that. But there'll be markers too, like you'll want to get out of the spot because you can see the ground start to light up, or there's different mechanics that'll happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's even one raid that has like a math thing in there. You need to know your prime numbers, and it'll drop your health to a number. And it'll be like you need to be a multiple of this number, and there's certain spots to stand on, and you have to make your number like one of those, and it incorporates that into the actual battle.
That's not selling it.
I'm just saying, there's a lot of different things.
It's not
mechanics. So
it's not just
it's not
hitting a hot bar
just,
and waiting for the.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
No, you're moving around a lot. You're constantly learning different ways the bosses are attacking, and they have different things like that. Some you'll have to like stand on a platform, or other parts you'll have to activate like a little pressure lever, and it'll activate an aurora, and then like a couple of your people can go up and attack the enemy, and then you've got to each different group, because there's 3 different groups for raids. We'll have to do that.
So now you're talking about like Destiny stuff, like standing on a platform and then the shield goes down.
Destiny.
Huh?
This is just better than Destiny. I'll actually do these. I won't go back to Destiny.
Yeah. Is this a subscription thing?
Yeah, it's $15 a month.
Okay.
And then I think it's $40 for the expansion, or $60 if you want to get the collectors. But as of right now, you still can't purchase it if you haven't prior.
Oh, right.
They
so
still
I can't play it even if I want to.
Yeah, they even had to go as far as, because they had free trials to where you could play up to level 60, up to the end of the last expansion.
Yeah.
For free. Which is
just like Destiny.
Walks away.
Free to play up until the latest
If you say Destiny
content.
one more time, Stephanie will pop into the
I know.
the chat.
All right,
it's
that sounds cool.
And
it just sucks that it's hard to play.
Yeah, it's definitely made an impact even on like across the board, from trying to play, trying to experience it, and then
once you're on there, are there any technical issues like server lag or anything like that?
Every now and then we have gotten some lag, but they've done a bunch of updates and a couple patches to try to smooth everything out.
Yeah.
They were able to quickly figure out what some of the problems were. And then as much as they could do with the hardware power that they have now, they were able to smooth some things out. Because like we would have like if you're in the queue line, there is a chance you could get disconnected. But again, that ties into the variables between is it something a server conflict is so many people trying to get in. How steady is your internet? Is your internet going to spike and drop you out? So as much as they could fix and handle, they've done a pretty good job with that.
Yeah. All right. I'm sure like there must be some way to fix this with like NFTs, right?
Fuck you.
That there has to be somebody out there pitching that, right? Like, oh, if you just get this game on the blockchain, everything will be fine, man.
Which is absolutely hilarious that you even mentioned that, because we'll just go into like microtransaction type stuff. If you can see it in the footage I sent, that's what my guild was talking about. Was like somebody was asking about that, and they don't focus on it. Like that's not their focus of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like WoW kind of became a huge cash grab for everything they put up on their store. Yeah. Most of the stuff on the Final Fantasy store has been there since it originally released and hasn't really changed.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's good. At least they're getting their money through people actually paying for it and wanting to play it, not through trinkets and bullshit and like that. Or was it WoW that did the real money auction at some point?
Oh yeah, you could farm out money in WoW and use that to buy game time.
Yeah, the original NFT.
I actually did that a couple times just to come back and check out their updates.
You're part of the problem, man.
Yep. Sorry, I killed WoW.
Yeah.
Quick question: what the fuck's an NFT?
Well, an NFT is a non-fungible transaction.
Oh, I don't care.
It's a digital version of something that you pay for and is locked to the blockchain, which means you are the only one that can own that digital thing, even though I can copy and paste it wherever I want. There's no way that you can tell me to stop or stop me from doing it. And the only person that really knows that you own it is you or the other person that cares about NFTs.
What?
It's an even shittier version of Bitcoin.
So why is this?
Well, it's related to Bitcoin.
Why is this a thing, and why have I only just heard about it?
I can't believe you've only just heard about it, because like Ubisoft's putting it in their games. The stuff.
Yeah, weren't they?
The stalker.
Weren't they the ones that just had it sell like it only sold 15 units?
Yeah, they put it in. Well, that's because they put it in Ghost Recon Breakpoint, where only 15 people are playing that game. Which is hilarious that they put it in that game. But
it's crazy because they keep adding shit to that game too.
Yeah, I know. They obviously paid a lot of money to produce that game. If you look at that free-to-play game that they announced a little while ago, I forget what it's called. Not X Defiant. It's a different one. It looks like a total asset rip of Breakpoint. Like all of the stuff that they probably created for Breakpoint, they just put into this game. And are doing it free to play so they could make it on microtransactions or something like that. It just looks so much like a mess of that, a Breakpoint 2.0 or something like that. Yeah, so the Stalker 2 devs were going to put NFTs in Stalker, and people were mad. And like within like an hour, they reversed their decision. It's not great. It's the biggest, like, obviously bad for consumer thing that video games have done for quite a while. Luckily not everyone's falling for it, but obviously we have some that are going to try it.
No.
Yeah,
I can't believe I missed all this, but then again, I haven't been outside really since 2020, so.
Well, this is all digital, so
I don't know what's going on.
don't have to go outside.
I'm kind of like Robin Williams at the beginning of Jumanji right now. Sort of gone horribly wrong. Great NFT sound, so great, lovely. Right.
All right. Well, that wraps up our Games of the Year official list. We each had our top 5. We just went through them in order of release date. And yeah, that's kind of. I look at the list and it's like I'm not gonna remember any of these games. Maybe Age of Empires 4. But like, I guess when Valheim finally comes out of early access, I'll think about it again. But everything else is just kind of like, whatever, man.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, Endwalker will be the only thing I'm on, just because I still have a ton to do on it. But
yeah,
other than that, it's just kind of like,
Yeah, so that's 2021. Because it's 2021 and the way the year panned out, we have a huge list of honorable mentions. Mostly games that either we played a good amount of but didn't finish, or games that were fun but didn't had too many issues to actually put them on our top of the list. And so we'll get into those. And yeah, I guess we'll kick it off with the kind of last game that came out that is on our list here, which is Halo Infinite. I think we all touched this one, right?
Yeah.
Leigh?
I did. I would have put it on there, to be honest with you, but I just hadn't sunk enough into it to feel confident enough to put it on there. And I didn't play the multiplayer, but I played the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff. It seems like I've not ever really dipped into Halo. I actually enjoyed my time from what I played.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. It's like I didn't play enough of the campaign to really justify putting it higher on my list, on the list proper. And I'm not sure I would have. Like, I think it's what I've played of it. It's fine. It's like it's pretty good. Fun to kind of mess around that open world with like grab yourself a warthog and bomb around with some Marines. It's always fun to kill the Covenant, and the story missions have been pretty good, like what you'd expect from a Halo campaign in that respect. But it's not like earth shattering or anything like that. It's there's a couple of new things that they've added to it and stuff like that, like the grappling hook and some of the upgrades and stuff. But a lot of the tools that I've gotten so far, I'm not really using too much. Like you get like if you've played the multiplayer, it's all the equipment you get in that version of the game. So there's like a shield that you can put down that will stop incoming bullets. I just unlocked the dash ability, but it takes up your spot that would normally be used for the grappling hook, which is kind of the big, piece of equipment that they give you here that really changes the gameplay up quite a bit from other Halo games. So I really haven't found myself switching to those other pieces of equipment too often.
Having not really played Halo before, I can't imagine it not having that grappling hook. For something that's been introduced this late down the line, it seems pretty seamless, much of a seamless addition.
Oh yeah, they definitely.
I wouldn't have guessed it wasn't there.
Yeah, they definitely did a good job integrating that. They didn't do a good job of explaining why all of a sudden he has a grappling hook, but they did a good job of like blending it into the gameplay because Halo, the old Halo games are pretty slow moving games. They're shooters. There's not a lot of, you're not jumping around a lot. You're not doing special tricks like you do in like Titanfall or the newest Doom games or anything like that. And with 4 is still a really slow moving game. 5 they tried to spice it up a little bit, but didn't go full on like Titanfall or anything like that. And here's where they've really opened it up and made it a much more faster moving Master Chief, which feels a little bit more in line with what you've seen of him in like the cutscenes and stuff, where he's doing all kinds of cool acrobatics and stuff. But I don't think it's quite there. Like I'd really like to see them go off the wall with it and give you the mobility of like Doom Eternal or Titanfall, and see how that would go.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is a good mix of kind of testing the waters for where they want to go, and as far as opening it up and like breaking further away from that more linear style. They didn't make it overbearing. Sometimes you'll get a game that opens up and then there'll be so many things on there you just don't know what to do. But it seems from what I've seen so far of like the TAC map and like going to do different things, there's just enough where it's not overbearing.
Yeah. It's a well built game that has some issues, definitely, certainly in terms of like the storytelling, and like the Halo storytelling has always been a little out there, but it's at least been a little bit easier to follow than this. The game very much throws you into a situation where you have no idea what's going on, and it's not a matter of like you haven't played the previous game or you haven't played Halo Wars 2 or something like that, which some of the like the bad guy faction in this game comes from Halo Wars 2. But there's stuff that is just happening here that is not explained in any previous game. So like the grappling hook, like what the weapon is, even though it's pretty much just Cortana again, and a lot of other things like that. But detached from that, the game is fun to play, and it's not this huge, giant, limitless open world either. It's a pretty small landmass that you're navigating around. There isn't tons and tons of stuff to do, but I feel like it's packed enough to justify the space, without going into too much too much busy work and stuff like that.
Yeah, fair enough.
I don't know if that's how you guys feel about it or not.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel the same way. Like there's some open spots, but none of it's like too open to where you feel like you're going on without finding anything. Like there's always kind of something happening pretty close by.
Yeah.
What is the deal with all those metallic pillars that are just everywhere? Is that just easy traversal stuff, or is that storied?
I don't know. I mean,
like hexagonal pillars everywhere.
Yeah, I mean the halos are obviously artificial, so I think it's just the fact that it's been
part of the ring
smashed up, and you're like seeing the underneath parts of it. I think that's
fair enough.
Maybe there's more of an explanation farther in the story, but there isn't like a long-term Halo reason for that to be like that.
No. Oh.
Yeah. So, how I know I've played quite a bit of the multiplayer and I enjoy it quite a bit. Leigh said he didn't check it out, but I know Derrick, you played a little bit.
Yeah, I played a little bit on PC, and then I also used the streaming of it a little bit, and it worked pretty well going both ways.
Yeah, that's good.
Of course, on PC it was, and then on the streaming, after a little more fine tuning with the controller settings, and a better stable internet, because I did try it on just like 5G, and it wasn't really having it. But once I was connected to the internet, it played fine using my iPad. So it was fun. It was enjoyable. It was, Halo multiplayer.
Yes, it's definitely a return to that classic Halo multiplayer. For the most part, there's, like I mentioned before, the equipment is a new addition, and there's like some new weapons and stuff like that. But overall, you're playing Slayer, you're playing Capture the Flag, Oddball, all those classic modes, and it's really a good version of that Halo multiplayer. Halo 5 was a little disappointing in that respect, so it's good for them. It's good that they came back with some fresh ideas, but also making sure that they recaptured that classic feel. And it's free to play, so you can just pick that up and play it. They've been very responsive with feedback on the battle pass and the progression and stuff like that. So I feel like they've got a good long-term game on their hands there.
Yeah.
All right. Leigh, why don't you tell me about Cruise and Blast?
Cruise and Blast.
Yeah.
Arcade-style race game. One of Nintendo's more forgotten franchises, I think, is probably because it has most of its time spent on the N64 era. It's kind of lost in time, but they brought it back for the Switch. It's kind of a weird amalgamation of like real world supercars in ridiculously overblown racetracks, like prehistoric. Sometimes sometimes it's like weird super like Wipeout type stages and stuff like that. It's just a wacky fun blast of a kind of, if you excuse the...
No, would you say it's a blast?
I would say it's a cruise and blast.
Yeah.
It's just fun.
Yeah, this is in the lineage of like Cruisin' USA and Cruisin' World and stuff like that, which I played mostly in the arcade, like the big, like they'd have the wheel and the shifter and be a big giant booth that you'd sit in. That was I think this is the first one since the first Cruisin' USA that is from an arcade port. I think all the others were home, so it's kind of gone back to its roots again. Yeah. All right, cool. So what is it that made it not land on your top list?
Fairly limited, obviously, because it's got the scope of it doesn't add much more content than the arcade machine did, and obviously are limited to a certain amount of playtime and stuff like that. I've got a few extra tracks and stuff like that on there, but I just thought the other stuff was a little bit better. It's kind of streaming line in that top 5. It's not that it's significantly worse than the others. It just didn't squeeze in there. I would have had to drop one of the others. Yeah. But it could have made it. It could have easily made it because it is a really solid blast, similar to one of the ones you played. What was the weird kind of arcadey race game you played this year?
Oh, Hot Wheels Unleashed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose it's a similar sort of subgenre as that.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't end up playing too much of that.
No.
It did. It had this kind of weird aesthetic that it was almost like a free to play loot box game, and it wasn't. Like there weren't any microtransactions in it or anything like that. But it had that presentation to it, and it was just weird. I don't know. I didn't like the way that it presented itself.
Oh, shame.
Yeah, all right. So, Derrick, let's talk about Naraka Blade Point.
Sorry. Once again, we're diving into another Battle Royale game, which I think by now I've almost played every single one that's came out. But this one is kind of more like combat focused. So it kind of mixed things up a little bit more, like your melee weapons are your main focus, with some special abilities and powers depending on kind of like which character and class you picked. And obviously in this one too, you also have like a grappling hook that you can use to get around, which makes it super traversal, and you can climb up almost anything. Like if you can see it, like the trees you can climb up. They have buildings, towers. The landscapes are very well done, very well presented. It was just a really good time. I've had a lot of fun playing it. I originally played it during the Steam demo days.
Yeah, okay.
I think it was the summer one was when I saw it. And I think you had pointed it out to me too originally when we were looking through for stuff to stream from there.
Yeah. I had seen it.
It was a lot of fun. I played it there. I enjoyed it when it came out. I picked up one of the little founder packs for it. And just recently came back to play it some more after it's had some updates. But it's a solid little battle royale title. It was just a lot of fun.
All right, cool. Let's knock unpacking off of this list, because I was surprised when it showed up, Leigh.
So was I. I was really charmed by unpacking. It's
let's unpack it.
Let's do that. You're really on form with this one. You're banging it out, smashing them out. It's a super chill kind of management game where you have kind of 2 or 3, sometimes more as the time goes on, flip screens, and you literally you move into a place, and you unpack the boxes one by one, and you arrange the stuff in there in certain ways. You just pop it on the shelf or in the cupboard. You put your socks in the drawer. It sounds really dull, but there's something super charming about it, and really kind of pleasant. There's no real story. There's no kind of context to what it is, but weirdly you get so much out of it. Kind of, it's a span of time between 1997 and 2018, and every time you complete a new place, it's like you move on to another stage in the person that's move's life. And some things that carry over your life, and it's like, oh, that's the thing you had before, and then new stuff moves in. You move in with different people. It doesn't tell you that, but you can tell that instantly that you're moving in. And sometimes your relationship don't work out, but you can tell that without even getting a stitch of kind of context. It's like, well, you're not going to gel very well with this person you've moved in. You don't really fit. It's really weird how they've really kind of gone into it and kind of made it a really kind of immersive type thing with absolutely nothing. It's a really charming game. And it's one of those things that if you're a certain sort of person and you're in there, and then you have a kind of an organisational thing, and you're playing it like, oh no, I'm going to be here for a while. And it's just kind of getting it, you can put things in the wrong places sometimes, and it will let you know that it's not it's supposed to be the right thing, and the boxes aren't always for the same room and stuff like that. Sounds naff, but it's super slick. It's really it's just really nice little game.
Yeah, I had
really charmed.
I played the demo. They're in one of the Steam demo sessions or whatever, and I liked it. It was like it's got a really nice art style, and the act of like opening the boxes even is satisfying. And then when you finish a box, it like folds up and poof disappears. It's all really good. And then it came out and I played it. I got a little bit past where I had in the demo, and I just kind of was like, I'm not getting what I thought I was going to get out of this. So I put it down, but yeah, I'm usually a champion of these kinds of like simple indie games, like charming indie games, but for some reason this one, once I get to a certain point, I was just like, I'm done. I think it's a lot of like in my life, in reality, I'm a slow unpacker. So like just like in the game, I would just stop unpacking and go do something else.
Yeah.
So
well, as a Game Pass game, because I played something, I would never have touched this before.
Yeah.
And I did, and I found it really charming. I really enjoyed my time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would never have touched this if it wasn't for Game Pass.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a quick shout for Game Pass as well, because me obviously being a physical media person, I never.
Oh,
really
you're physically a person.
I am a physical person.
Yeah.
You wouldn't believe it.
You won't believe how physical.
You'd be able to walk through walls, not anymore.
Yeah.
But I've really bought into the Game Pass thing, and there's so much stuff that I played that I would never have played. A lot of stuff I played, I'll never play again. But that's the joy.
It kind of goes both ways with Game Pass. It's like sometimes you play it and you're like, nope. But sometimes you play it and you're like, this is really awesome. This is really great. We didn't mention about Halo Infinite's, of course, on Game Pass as well. The campaign and the multiplayer is free to play, so that's you can just play that if you want to. All right, I'm gonna knock Hitman 3 off of this. Leigh, you also played 3, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
All right. So,
but forgot that it was 2021, so it didn't go on my list, but it probably would have done. Yeah,
this was a very, very early 2021 game, and so this is the last hoorah for them with Hitman. Well, not necessarily. I guess they've already announced that they're releasing some more maps for 3 next year. So they're not completely done with Hitman, but they are moving on. IO is moving on to James Bond, which I'm pretty excited about.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And this is kind of like them wrapping up the their current current storyline and putting a bow on their, I think they call it the World of Assassination trilogy. And it is has some of the strongest levels and some of the weakest levels, in my opinion, in this new reboot that they've done with it. I think some of the levels that they have here are really great. Like there's the Dartmoor mansion that's like almost like a Sherlock Holmes mystery, or like a Knives Out kind of situation where you can actually play an investigator. Like instead of just dressing up like a character like Hitman usually, like 47 usually does, and doing whatever the hell he wants, he actually plays the character of the detective. And there's actually a whole system in the game where you're questioning people, you're uncovering clues, and it's keeping track of them, and that will help you get what you need. You're solving a mystery, but it's in service of getting what you need out of the mansion. And it's a very big departure from what they've done before, and it's a pretty cool addition to the formula. And then you can go back to that and play it pretty much like a regular Hitman mission afterward, if you don't want to go and be the detective and stuff. But having that as an optional way to play that, I thought was pretty cool. And there's there's another mission at a nightclub that kind of flips the script a little bit, and makes you the one being hunted, and you have to figure out who the bad guys are, and then take them out and stuff like that. And that's a really cool level. And then is another really cool level to go back to and check out. But after that, so that's like the third or fourth mission. After that, I just kind of did not like the levels after that Berlin mission. Especially the last mission, which is not even really a mission. It turns into just kind of like a shooting gallery. And you know, it's I don't really, I guess I can spoil some stuff here because it's been a year since the game's been out, but it's like you're on a train, and you're on the back of the train, and you're just moving toward the front of it, and you can, you know, there's some things you can stealth around, but there's really no options. There isn't a whole lot of options on that train, and unlike, you know, what you usually get with these Hitman missions, which are just tons and tons of options, different ways to explore the space and clear the objectives, and that is just like, to be the last mission and to be so, like, I don't know, it was disappointing, and I felt like there were some other disappointments as well. Like the Dubai mission was the first mission you're on, is a cool looking place, but it's a very standard mission, like a very, very standard scenario. You know, nothing really stood out with it. And yeah, I just think that, like, I like some of the experiments they took with it, especially considering that they really hadn't taken any in the past. Like almost all of the previous games were just pretty standard mission after standard mission. So it was cool that they took some risks, but I don't think a lot of it paid off. And to have it be the conclusion was just kind of like, meh. I don't know. What do you think, Leigh?
I think they pushed it as far as they could go. Obviously, if they're obviously going to not wrap it up completely, I'll wrap it up for a while, do a bit of Bond, and they'll probably go back to it in a few years. But I feel like it's the culmination of everything they've done over the last couple, without pushing it too far. So you end up in kind of Absolution type, kind of completely remove it from the style.
Yeah.
Obviously, I understand what you say about the last one, but it's like when it's that rambling. So it can be rambling if you want it to be. That rambling sort of level-based, like exploration-based, experimentation-based thing doesn't really suit the culmination of kind of, you need the propulsion towards the end, I guess. So I understand why you would lose the kind of experimentation side of it, but it does kind of give you the punch towards the end that you wouldn't get if you could just do it at your own pace, I guess.
Yeah, I guess ultimately the problem is like the story was never really all that great here. Mm-hmm. You know, it was never really like, this is a story-driven game. You know, it was always about the levels, always about going back and retrying them to get better scores and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I enjoyed it. I still think 2's the best one probably of this. This sub-theme
of the collection of levels. 2 definitely had the strongest set of levels.
Yeah, but no, I liked it enough, but I haven't really gone back to get fun with it like I normally do.
Yeah. So, I mostly put it on here to just, you know, give it its credit as like the conclusion of, you know, like this one, his Hitman 2, Hitman 1, 2, and 3 here have been some of the best. I mean, it's the best that Hitman's ever been, but some of the best like level design period in any game, and in the way that you know, you can just keep trying these and figuring out different ways to do things and learning all of the ins and outs of all these levels is incredible. And and there was and the fact that the way that they've structured these games is that you can just play them all in Hitman 3. Like, you can, all of the levels come forward from the previous games, and they all get little quality of life improvements along the way. Yeah. And you can just launch Hitman 3 and go back to that very first mission in Hitman in the first game, and play it. It's almost like, you know, it's one big giant game at this point. And that's another thing that's, you know, special, because, you know, I don't really know any other games that have done that to that extent anyway.
Yeah, but yeah, it does bode well for Bond.
Yeah,
if they go along this track.
Yeah, like a Bond game in the format of these Hitman games is really, really exciting to see what they can do.
Get out of that FPS rut they ended up in.
Yeah. All right, let's go to Integrate here, Derrick.
All right. So this was initially the next-gen version of Final Fantasy VII, so your PlayStation 5 version, and I believe on X as well.
I don't think so.
Yeah, maybe not.
No, this isn't on. Yeah, Final Fantasies. You're talking about the remake, right?
Right.
Yeah, no, that didn't come out on Xbox. It's out on PC now.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I got mixed up with. Anyway, so this brought us in and gave us our first bit of DLC, which was the first bit of the game that was completely designed on next-gen console. The intermission DLC, you're not able to play on last-gen. It's purely PlayStation 5 and PC now. But it was telling Yuffie's story and kind of tying her in, giving us a little 10-hour bit of her story and kind of coming into the setting and how she got mixed into everything, which is something that you really don't see too much of when you play the original Final Fantasy VII. So it was a nice little bit to see, to kind of see more into her personality and how she got to the way she was and how she met up with the characters, even though the story is slightly changed up with the remake of Final Fantasy VII and our kind of broadening of it. But it was a really good showcase of how well combat works, how nice the game looks, and how steady it'll run on the next-gen hardware. So it'll be nice to see once we get part 2 of it that's completely built, you know, that chunk of it's completely built on next-gen hardware, of how it'll come out. So it's just kind of a nice little tidbit there to kind of throw up as a nice mention, because it really did show off well what the system can do and can handle.
I thought this was the Chaos thing, and it's not.
Nope.
No. Okay.
That's not out yet. You got I believe that comes out in March.
Okay. Well, they had a demo out, right, or something like that.
Yeah, they did 2 demos of that.
Okay, that's what confused me.
Yeah, that one will be Strangers of Paradise.
Okay. All right, so Final Fantasy VII Intergrade. So basically, just to kind of sum it up, that's Final Fantasy VII, what came out last year on PS4, plus the Yuffie DLC, in one package, right?
Yeah,
kind of deal.
And strictly for the PlayStation 5, and now that the PC port came out, I believe it's tied in with that as well.
I've heard some mixed things about that PC port, so
that
might want to hold off on that until they smooth some of that out.
Even though the modders have already got a hold of that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Dark Pictures, Leigh, because House of Ashes, because you get this on here, and it's been kind of ups and downs with that Dark Pictures series. So why is this on your honorable mentions but not your top list?
It's I've been on and off with the Dark Pictures thing, being a big fan of Until Dawn. I think the first 2 kind of Dark Pictures games, Man of Medan and Little Hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of had interesting elements, but just really did not cut it.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of really cut it, and kind of spoilers for games that I don't think people really played anyway. But they both have kind of cop out endings,
Yeah.
to say the least. It's like, oh, it's not real anyway. Don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
This, although it is a lot more, I think the thing that probably knocks it down a little bit is a little bit of a generic set-up story. It's not as interesting as Little Hope specifically, which had a cool concept but didn't stick the landing. This is kind of military in Iraq fall through a hole in the ground, and hijinks ensue.
There's some evil, like ancient evil, and so yeah,
Possibly, yeah. Let's say that.
Well, it's
But
a
yeah,
setup anyway.
Yeah, but I do think this finally has the right pace of what we had with Until Dawn. They had a little bit more interactivity with this, to kind of give it more of a kind of like when Telltale sort of like tries to implement almost like action set pieces and stuff like that. You get a lot more of that timing based, not quite, a little bit beyond QTE stuff, with stuff like that. And it's, it definitely leans more into a kind of a action horror type thing.
Yeah, I watched a playthrough of this, and man, so many of these people are assholes.
Oh God, yeah.
Like,
But
there's the one dude that's like the wife, the husband, or whatever, and he's just like the biggest asshole.
Do you find that with all these games? These Dark Pictures games, that they're all...
Not really, no. I didn't think...
Really?
I think that first game, I didn't see anything of Little Hope, really, but Man of Medan, I thought most of the characters were okay, and then there was the asshole character. Like it was the Sean Ashmore or whatever, it was like the asshole character. But most of them are were like just like pretty normal characters. And I wouldn't say necessarily likable, but just pretty run of the mill. But everyone in this pretty much was an asshole. And then what did they do to poor Ashley Tisdale's face?
Oh yeah. I don't know what happened with that.
That was
about
like
a generation old.
Yeah, that was there was some other weird face stuff in this one. Like I noticed it more in this one than I did in the previous games, where like there was just an uncanniness to a lot of the lip sync or something, or
too much teeth.
Yeah, I think that's
There's a lot of teeth going on.
Maybe a little too much teeth and not enough lip, I think.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Story of my life. But yeah, this one has a bit more propulsion than the others, but it's maybe not as interesting, so it doesn't get on the top list. But it definitely has more of a clip to it than the other two. So yeah,
too much teeth, not enough lip. The story of 2021. All right. Well, that's Dark Pictures House of Ashes. I guess I'll do Death's Door real quick. I just added this on kind of last minute here, because I had gone back to it. I'd played it a little bit when it came out and kind of hit like a difficulty brick wall, and then other stuff came out, so I kind of put it away, even though I had really liked what I had played. So I recently went back to it, and this is just a really cool, like Legend of Zelda like almost, with a little bit of Dark Souls mixed in, because like you're collecting a currency when you're killing enemies and you're using that to upgrade, but it's not really as challenging as a Dark Souls game. The bosses are pretty tough, but they do pretty good jobs of like checkpointing you, so you don't have to do a lot of backtracking, and you don't lose anything when you die or anything like that. So it's a little, soft gloves in that respect. But the exploration is really cool in it. The art is really, really good. Like it's an amazing looking game. It actually reminds me a lot of what they've shown off of Tunic, which it finally got a release date coming out next March, I think it is, or April, I'm not sure. But it has a lot in common, I think, with that in terms of like the art style is like really well done fantasy, a lot of variations of environments and stuff like that. The writing and story is pretty funny too. You're like this crow that's a reaper. Like you go in and you reap souls. Like on there's this whole thing where your soul. It's all set up like this big bureaucratic. I don't know what you want to call it, but like underworld or whatever, where you're just checking in on your daily grind or whatever, and there's like other crows at desks doing paperwork for all the souls that are being reaped and stuff like that. So that's it's got a little bit of a charm there, a little bit of a sense of humor, but it's just really a really solid, like kind of like, I guess you could say, one of these games where it's like pulling from a little bit of Zelda, pulling from a little bit of the Souls games, and giving you a good linear experience. You do get abilities that you can use to go back and unlock different areas like you would more in like the way of a Zelda game rather than a Metroidvania, where it's not necessarily a huge part of the game, but you are doing that a little bit here and there. So yeah, I wanted to give that a shout out because I didn't really give it its due when it originally came out, and I've been enjoying it now that I've had some free time to put into it. I think that's on everything. I'm not sure. It's a Devolver Digital game too, so you know that it's got that pedigree behind it. Maybe it's just Xbox and PC right now. Not sure. No, it's on PlayStation. Oh yeah, it just came out on PlayStation Switch on the 23rd of November.
It's on everything but the Intellivision Amico.
Yeah, and it's also on the Dreamcast. Weird.
What?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. All right, that's store. So check that out if you're into those kinds of little indie Zelda-like games. Let's get Back for Blood. Let's get this. You know what? No, hold on.
Wait,
we were talking about this. Yeah, we were talking about this because Back for Blood is on Derrick's honorable mentions and Leigh's most disappointing. So what we'll save that one for the last and be the transition between honorable mentions and most disappointing. That makes the most sense. So Leigh, why don't you tell me about remasters? I don't know.
This is probably me kind of giving 2021 gaming a bit of a kick in, to be honest with you. Throughout this year, mostly what I played was kind of remasters of stuff. Whether it be Alan Wake or the GTA thing, which is a whole mess of nonsense.
Yeah,
but it did remind me of all those times when I played it back in the day and it was ruined by awful bugs. But there we go. That's another conversation. Or for some reason Bloodbrain was back. Who knows? But Stubbs the Zombie and Shadow Man, all this nonsense. To be honest with you, I could have put Alan Wake maybe on my top 5 this year, but I feel like that's a bit of a cop-out because that's like now a 10-year-old game. And I don't feel like I want to let...
Yeah, but if it's a good remake or a good remaster...
Yeah. I don't want to let this year off that easy, but I just found it's a weird thing because I've played all these stuff and it's kind of... a lot of these games are flawed. They're kind of old and janky, but they've got a lot of spirit in them, and they've got a lot of kind of weird, quirky things that you don't get these days. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting there trying to work out what to put in my thing, and I'm like, in my top 5, and I'm like, well, there's not really any really big games I played this year. I was sitting there at one point thinking, it's a shame that Ubisoft didn't put out a game this year that I played. And then I realised I spent £60 on a Far Cry 6. And I completely forgot. So that was well spent. But yeah, it's just that thing. It's like most of the things that are interesting I played this year is old shit, and next year needs to change. I found this a really dull year, and most of the stuff I found interesting was like flawed stuff from about 10 to 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Really weird year this year.
Yeah.
So that's why I didn't put the big stuff, like stuff like Alan Wake up there, because it's like, no, I'm not going to let you off that easy, 2021.
Yeah, a lot of the big hitters this year should have come out, but got pushed to the beginning of next year. Ooh. Like this ridiculous story of Dying Light 2, which who knows if that's gonna hit or not. But like Elden Ring was supposed to be this year, and that got pushed. Horizon Forbidden West. Was originally supposed to be this year and got pushed. So there's a lot of stuff that got that should have come out this year that got pushed for, mostly for like pandemic, hard to make these games work when you're not actually working together in person and stuff like that. So a lot of it makes sense, but yeah, it end up making for a kind of lackluster 2021.
So a lot of the big games really fell flat on their ass for me this year.
Yeah.
Really did.
All right, let me talk about Metroid Dread, which is a game that was really hard for me to not put on my top 5 for a number of reasons. And I'll just say that the reason why it's not on my top 5 is because I have not finished it. And the reason why I have not finished it is because I kind of lost steam on it. And other stuff came out too, and I will obviously go back to it and clean it up. But there's like the fact that this game actually came out is a miracle in itself. Yeah. Like it's been forever since there's been a proper 2D Metroid game on a Nintendo like flagship console. We've had a couple of handheld ones like the Metroid 2 remake and the last one, which was Metroid Fusion, fully original release, came out a long time ago. So really the last 2D big console Metroid was Super Metroid, which is crazy. And for I'd say like 80% here, Metroid Dread is everything that you'd want in a 2D Metroid in 2021. It's got excellent level design, all your upgrades and everything is there. And your some like returning bosses and some new bosses are there. The structure is a little strange. You have like you travel between these zones through very, very specific places you go. You like go to like a transport unit, a transport room, and then that'll transport you to a different part of the area, and then that area is its own little space, and then you have to find another transport to get to another area, which makes getting around a little tedious. There isn't a whole lot of, like, it's not just, it doesn't feel like one big seamless world that you're exploring. You have these little interchanges between them, and that if you're trying to figure out, especially if you're trying to figure out where to go next, which you find yourself doing a lot in these types of games, you find yourself like sometimes wasting time going between different areas, trying to figure out what the next thing is to do. And I think for me, the biggest issue with this game ended up being the IMI stealth encounters. And at first I was like, oh, these aren't too bad. These are areas where there are these like murder robots that detect you based on sound mostly, and if they detect you and they see you, they're going to chase you down, and you can't kill them with your regular weapons. You can, like, there are opportunities to like stun them so you can get away, but you cannot like kill them. You need to get a special weapon, and that's a whole nother thing that I think sucks as well. But you end up dying a lot. A lot of it ends up being trial and error, trying to get through these zones that are, patrolled by these robots. And it didn't feel challenging. It felt more like I was getting like it wasn't really my execution. It was more just like, this just kind of sucks.
Yeah, really tedious.
Yeah, extremely tedious. And it wasn't a lack of me not executing properly. It was just like, oh, I got cornered by this thing and it's going to see me no matter what, because that's just the way that its patrol route is going, or something like that. And then, like, the fact that you can't make a lot of noise in these areas means you either gotta move slow, or you gotta hide and wait for it to pass by you. And it's just kind of the worst implementation of stealth that you could do, because there's no real skill involved in it. It's just kind of like crossing your fingers and hoping this time the enemy's not going to see you. And then when you do get the ability to kill them, it's like this special power up you get for your beam. Like, you have to first take down the enemy's like protective shield kind of thing. So it goes into like this third person over the shoulder view, where you're shooting as Samus, and you have to hit the enemy in its face until the armor falls apart, and then you have to do this charge up shot right into its eye, like its now exposed eye. And like, the aiming isn't great, so like when you're trying to melt the armor off, you're missing a ton, and this thing's like charging at you, and then if it gets you, there is an opportunity to do a QuickTime event to possibly get away from it. But the QuickTime event, the game even says, when in the tutorialization of the QuickTime event, that it's pretty much impossible to get this QuickTime event. It like says that in the tutorialization. It's like it's almost impossible to get this QuickTime event, but you can try. And maybe I've got it 2 out of 30 times.
Wow.
And it's not like a button prompt that comes up on screen or anything like that. You have to react to the way the enemy moves, or like like it puts out a spike and then stabs Samus. So you have to like react in that super split second of it. Like if they put a button prompt up there, it would take you too long to react to the button prompt. That's how fast this quick time event is. It might as well not be there. It's because it's more frustrating than it is like challenging or like skill involved in skill. So it's kind of like I wish it would just, you get caught, you die, you load back to your previous checkpoint. Because it's really just, it ends up being a very tedious waste of time. So that's not even like why I actually stopped playing, because those Emmy moments are few and far between, thankfully. Why I ended up stopping playing was more because of the navigation aspect of it, not knowing where I was supposed to go, and then spending a ton of time going down, this route, and then having to backtrack all the way. And it sucks because so much of this is just really, really fantastic. Like, it's such, you move so smoothly as Samus, you move so fast. Almost all of the environments and secrets and abilities you get are really awesome. Like they really make you feel powerful. The non-Emmy boss fights are challenging, but also, not cheap or anything like that. And it looks really nice too. Like it's a really fantastic looking game. It's 2D, but, it has a really good art style, and it looks a little meh when it goes into like these third person, like quick time things. Like it doesn't look super great, but in that 2D view, it looks really fantastic, really great lighting and stuff like that. So, in a world where, every other indie game that's coming out is a Metroidvania, to have them come back with Metroid and be like, hey, this is how you do it. This is how you do, because there's nothing wrong with the Metroidvania side of this game. This is how you do one of these in 2021, in the face of like the Ori games and Axiom Verge and, some of these bigger Metroidvania games. To say that we still do it better is great. But it's just, there's a couple of really, really thorns in the side of it that kind of ended up meant that it did not stick on my top list of the year.
Do you think it sits well with the classic, kind of like, let's say the classic, they're all classic, that original format? Do you think it sits well within that group? Or do you think it kind of misses the mark, doesn't quite reach the originals?
No, I just said that it knocked the Metroidvania formula out of the park.
Yeah.
Like said that that part of it is not what the problem is. Like in terms of the legacy stuff, it's fine. It's just it's the new thing that they added with this Emmy thing that I didn't think is really necessary. It's the whole reason the game is called Dread, because you're supposed to feel like you're being attacked and hunted, and it doesn't feel like that at all. It just feels like here's this really frustrating part of this game that I can't, like, there's no like skill I can learn to get better at this. There's no ability I can use to make this easier. I just need to slog through this and do it the way that they want me to, or I'm just gonna have to restart over and over again. So it's just that part of it was not needed, at least in that format, in my opinion. So
okay, on to Prime, I guess.
Yeah, I hope that they Prime's a weird thing because that first game's really awesome. The other two are not. So I don't know like what direction they're going with this new one. I hope it's just like a throwback to that first Metroid Prime game, because that game is just, it's like that's the best Metroid game
overall.
Yeah, Metroid Prime, that first one. So I hope they go more in that direction than where they took it with the other two games. But maybe someday we'll see. I don't know. All right, so that's Metroid Dread. Now, this is going to be our breaking point between honorable mentions and most disappointing. So, in that respect, Derrick, why don't you start with Back for Blood, and then we'll get into the weeds once you get your positive vibes in.
Yeah, that sounds good. Or should we call it Left 4 Dead 3?
Should we?
Yeah. Like I said, this is probably worked out perfectly like this, that it is on the border between honorable mention and most disappointing. Because while it did look great, it played great, it didn't make my top because there was some choices that I think they made with it that just didn't quite sit well or were pulled off too well. But we'll get back to that in a little bit. Once Leigh starts digging into it, we can kind of discuss that part of it. But for the parts of it that shined, were it was fun to play. It was fun to get in there with a group and go through these levels. It did a good job of kind of introducing how they do their formula. We can get point A to point B, adding in their story elements. I had a lot of fun with that. It's just once we started getting to the actual differentiation of characters and their play styles were highly based around having these cards, but earning the cards didn't seem like it came fast enough for you to make each character feel unique, to where you kind of had to keep playing the same sort of style depending which of these different characters / classes you kind of were using. So that's what kind of kept it short from being on my top.
Yeah, so as in terms of being the successor, so to speak, of Left 4 Dead, where does it sit for you? Is it good enough to say that Left 4 Dead 2 are completely off the table, or is it different enough to keep those older games still in your heart?
I think the older games will still stay in my heart because they're some of the ones where I found a lot of friends online gaming. A lot of the people that I still game with, kind of came from playing through those games and meeting them there. But it definitely does it brings back that series. But I think it just has some drawback points that kind of keep it from being as top tier as those first two were loved.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get Leigh's take here. What do you think about Back for Blood, Leigh?
Back for Blood. It's so disappointing in Back for Blood. For me, Left 4 Dead was kind of that Xbox killer app. I played Left 4 Dead at friends, and I'm I'm going to go and buy an Xbox 360. Sod this. I have real reverence for that. I do prefer 2. But they're just sweet spot games for me, and this seems to, we all talk about spiritual successor and stuff like that. They so lent into the fact that guys, we're doing Left 4 Dead, but we can't use the name. That everything they've added seems to kind of muddy the waters of what made those games good, which is kind of the simplicity of it, really. Mix it up with the cards and the stopping every 5 seconds to max your guns. The gunplay not being weirdly unsatisfying compared to the originals. I'm not enjoying the layouts of the levels so much, finding them a little bit rambling and a little bit kind of unnecessarily twisty-turny. buggier than it should be. Still buggier than it should be. There's just something that just did not work for me for this. Didn't. I'm not sure what's missing. I don't like the kind of the. I just don't like it. I don't know what doesn't work. I don't know what doesn't work about it. But I just find it great, massively unsatisfying.
I'd say like I agree with you is that the card system.
It's a busy work.
Kind of going away from having like the perks that the other characters had in like Left 4 Dead. It's just the card system's super tedious and doesn't let you, build up your character the way you want it quick enough. Like you have to invest a lot of time into even getting or hoping to getting like the card sets that you're looking for.
The kind of the more brutey type enemies or the more kind of upper class zombie type creatures are a pain in the arse in this where they weren't before. They kind of corner you in all the wrong ways, and something about it just does not work for me. I think, I don't know, it just feels really scrappy to me. It doesn't feel very refined at all. It just feels very unfinished, I would say. There's definitely a kind of unpolished nature to it. I don't know. Did you play it, Ryan? What did you think?
Well, what I played was that it was like a beta or whatever. I knew coming out of that it wasn't going to be my kind of thing. But and not to mention the fact that I had a lot of performance problems with that beta. That on PlayStation 4 Pro specifically, that thing ran like dog shit. Like I couldn't even believe how like the frame rate that was running at. There's something up with the input lag on the controls even and stuff like that. It was a real turn off. But I ended up during the open beta, I checked it out on PC and it ran much better there. But yeah, it's just not my kind of thing. Like I'm not a, I guess to put it kind of bluntly, I'm not a mindless shooter kind of person. Like I never got into like the arena shooter things like, Serious Sam and anything else like that. That was just like throwing like tons of enemies at you and you just shoot them. Like what was that game that came out? World War Z. I never, like, just looking at that game, I was like, I don't care about this. I'm not gonna. This looks like the most boring, tedious thing. It's like why I bounce off of like a game like The Division. Eventually, it's just like too much. Too much of the same thing, like bullet sponge enemies and stuff like just like not my thing. But I will say that there was obviously a lot of hype around this game because of its pitch as the next spiritual successor to Left 4 Dead, and I feel like the hype fell off quite a bit after it came out. Like I don't hear anybody talking about this game. I don't see a whole lot of even like media coverage of it. And that obviously doesn't mean for sure that it's not huge, but you kind of usually see things on the fringes, that it's like, oh, some people are still playing Back 4 Blood, but I don't really see that. Like Derrick, are you playing it regularly still?
No, not regularly. So that's why I kind of said like it kind of fell at a good point of being like the last thing we mentioned on honorable mentions versus most disappointing, because I feel it. I'm not gonna lie, it falls in that gray area for me.
I just feel like overall it kind of came and went, and I don't feel like it's like when in the future when we talk about Left 4 Dead likes, we're not going to talk about Back 4 Blood. We're still going to refer to it as Left 4 Dead, because I think that's still going to be the one that not only did it first, but is still considered the torchbearer.
Yeah.
Like, we can always see what'll happen too, because I know they still have like quite a bit of content planned for it. And even like when I went back to get the footage, it didn't take me too long to get into matches or anything. So it's not like it's completely dead, but like you said, it's just not being talked about either.
Yeah, I feel like with the criticisms and stuff, I think there'd have to be a lot of overhaul they'd have to do to it to get a lot of people to like jump on board at this point.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's Back 4 Blood.